comments in paragraph 8. Just some corrections to what was said. I'll just read them. Commissioner Kai said he did not see contemporary and modern style homes as being compatible with the existing neighborhood of traditional style homes. When he thought of Sherwood, contemporary and modern homes more reflected homes in Portland, not Sherwood. He understood the benefit of contemporary lines for keeping a low roof line for lots 1 through 3, but he saw the styles conflicting with the existing neighborhood.
All right, and also on page 6, can we get clarification that after I called for a recess, Commissioner Scott disclosed he looked at the site via Google Earth, and just inclusion, that's how we were able to see the trees that were on the lot. And then there was on page 12 of 13, I'm just going to tear this page out and give it to you a circled typo. A and the are both in there. There you go. Any other corrections or additions or changes before we vote on the minutes?
Chair Simpson, just a point of clarification. You don't have a second on the motion. Just
okay. Thank you. No, second.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda item. Before we vote on that, should we not vote to accept the changes submitted? Anybody want to?
Motion and a second to approve those amendments.
Yes. So I'm looking to Vice Chair to
I'm moving to accept
the amendments
of the agenda.
Of the minutes.
Of the minutes.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the amendments to the meeting minutes of January 23rd. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. And then now that we have accepted the amendments, all those in favor of accepting the Planning Commission meeting minutes from January 23rd as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes. I'll get it right sooner or later. It was more complicated. Most complicated in, oh boy, there's more than one thing on the agenda tonight, so hopefully it's not too much more complicated. Council liaison announcements. Counselor.
Hello. Out of deference for your large agenda and the people in the crowd, I'll skip my comments for tonight.
All right, moving right on to staff announcements. Erica?
Your next Planning Commission meeting is February 27th. You're going to have one public hearing, and that's going to be for the final site design review for the Springs PUD. And also, on another note, the city, we've selected our consultant for the city's visioning process, and that's moving forward, and we shall see that contract moving forward on the city council agenda on March 6th.
Are you able to announce who that is at this point, or you have to wait for the council to approve it?
3J Consulting.
3J? Okay. All right.
Like Jay or 3 J's? Just J.
J.
Just 3.
Through
Letter
J.
J.
Yep, letter J.
All right.
And is that a consultant for the comp plan update, or is this for something different?
This is for the visioning process, which kind of flows in conjunction with the comp plan update.
It's the first citizen outreach for.
Oh, okay.
A lot of public engagement.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, do you guys have a website set opened up yet for that? Is there
For the visioning process?
no
itself?
for the comprehensive plan? I know there's a tab so people can stay informed regarding the comprehensive plan update through the website.
We do.
And is there a mailing list that people can sign up for? Carrie's nodding yes.
We do have a mailing list. I don't know if we have a little tab on the website where you can input your mailing, your email address.
Yeah, I know we have a listserv for the comprehensive plan. I can check on where the tab and the link is for it.
Yeah, I know that we have sign-up sheets in the back of the room. Oftentimes, there's an opportunity to check if you're interested in getting further updates, that you'll be put on a list to be emailed. All right. Community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. If anybody wishes to speak tonight, either under community comments or under any of the public hearings that are open for public testimony, we ask that you fill out one of the blue cards and turn it in to a member of the staff over here. I don't see anybody handing me blue cards for community comments or someone racing to the front of the room for community comments. So we'll move forward to old business. And the first item is our public hearing. This is a continuance of PUD 1701 and SUB 1701 Denali Lane Planned Unit Development and Subdivision. This was continued from January 23rd. So I turn to Josh and ask him if I need to read the public hearing script again.
Just a matter of whether that's our practice or not. Once a continued hearing, do we typically reread the script? Okay. There's not a legal reason you have to or not, so I'm just wondering what the practice is. Sounds like no.
Okay. And I will not.
Just for clarification, you closed the public hearing.
Yes.
So we're really just
Deliberation.
getting rebuttal and deliberation. So reading the script
Is,
have a whole lot of merit anyways.
and it is legislative, so there's no reason to just, ex parte contact is
It's
not,
quasi,
this is.
no, it's legislative PD overlay. Yep, you're right.
Okay. All right, good deal. Then we will move right into the staff report.
Great. So if Brad can bring the screen up.
Uh-oh.
Excellent. Great. Good evening, Commissioners. Joy Chang, Associate Planner with the Planning Department. Before you tonight is the continuation hearing for Denali Lane Plan Unit Development 1701 and Subdivision 1701. On January 23rd, 2018, the Planning Commission held its meeting for the proposed Denali Lane PUD and subdivision. Staff provided an oral staff report, and the applicant presented their proposal, and members of the community provided testimony. The hearing was ultimately continued to tonight. On the 23rd of January, 3 key topics were identified. They were basically related to environmental, transportation, and Sherwood zoning code, community development code requirements. The environmental items identified consist of these listed on the site. DEQ cleanup, very specifically a remedial action work plan dated December 15th, 2017, approved by DEQ, was submitted and addressed the DEQ cleanup, and staff requested that any inquiry relating to the DEQ cleanup be directed to Mark Pugh with DEQ. Existing trees on lots 1 and 3, per the zoning code 16.142070, allows tree removal to accommodate the development, including building, parking, walkways, grading, etc., provided that the development satisfies certain standards. And the applicant provided a landscape plan that satisfied these requirements, which requires that development to provide a minimum 40% canopy cover. And this is based on the expected maturity canopy calculations provided in the code section. And 40% of the gross acreage for this site was 64,469 square feet. And the applicant plan shows a total of 103,699 square feet of canopy cover at maturity, at tree maturity, which of course exceeds that 40% requirement. The applicant proposed that all those trees and vegetation in the vegetative corridor and wetland buffer area will remain. And then related to natural habitat, the site does not have any upland and riparian habitat identified. So however, upland and riparian habitat are reflected east of the site and have been preserved through the creation of non-buildable tracts tracks E, F, and G of Ironwood Acres, number 2. And I'm going to have an image of that shortly. So in regards to environmental open space, the applicant has proposed several open space tracks. Track A, C, D, and E. And track C and E will further enhance the non-buildable track use of the site as stated. The right side is the image of the Ironwood Estates number 2, which identifies tracks E, F, G are considered open spaces. Related to transportation consisted of these 3 components: connectivity, safety, and access to an adjacent parcel. To discuss connectivity, we need to look at the Southeast Master Plan and the Transportation System Plan. The image on the left is the recommended plan, which is the alternative BC for the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. And this image on the right is the figure 18 local street connectivity map of the Transportation System Plan. The proposal is consistent with both plans with connection of Southwest Denali Lane to the north and ultimately connecting to Southwest Murdoch Road via Southwest Ironwood Lane. As shown, a cul-de-sac was never envisioned for this area. Safety. Southwest Denali Lane will be fully improved to a local street standard with sidewalks on both sides. Tract A, adjacent to Southwest Ironwood Lane, will have a pedestrian path to further connect pedestrians from Southwest Murdoch Lane to ultimately Southwest Denali Lane. The transportation and pedestrian improvements will add safety to all users of the facilities. At the January 23rd hearing, the city engineer stated that construction traffic could also be accommodated. The image reflected on this slide is the tax map for the site and the surrounding properties. The owner of tax lot 700 has requested for future access through Tract A, which we've circled here in the slide in red. The city engineer has reviewed the requests and requested future access through Tract A, and typically, access is addressed once a site proposes to subdivide. The site to the west has legal access to Southwest Murdoch Road through a 50-foot wide easement and is not landlocked. He stated that it is difficult to condition a future access point without a specific location identified. Ideally, the future access point would need to meet right-of-way design requirements like intersection spacing standards, width, and site distance. This slide reflects key items identified related to the code standards. Amended conditions of approval, we basically provided you with an Exhibit G with that revised conditions approval within your packet. We had modified language on several of the conditions for clarity as shown within that exhibit. We deleted an original condition B that required for a final tree preservation plan on existing street trees along Ironwood Lane, since the street trees were not actually on the property. So we replaced that condition with a new condition asking for a more detailed view corridor plan. Density allowance. This slide shows the recommended plan, again, the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. The maximum density of the Sherwood Master Plan, Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, is 4 dwelling units per the building, per net building acre under the identified code section. The net buildable area for the site is 2.60 acres after subtracting all of the right-of-way and environment constrained areas. Based on that net buildable area, the site can be developed with 10 lots, and the applicant is proposing 7, which of course meets the standard. There was a lot of conversation in regards to setback, side and rear. So hopefully this slide will clarify that. So lot 1 is an irregularly shaped lot. The definition in the code under 16.10 defines a rear yard lot line as a lot line which is opposite and most distant from the front lot line, provided that the irregular and triangular lots, which this is, the rear lot line shall be deemed a line 10 feet in length within the lot, parallel to and a maximum distance from the front lot line. So the rear yard is identified in red on this image. Since the rear yard lot line has been established, the original request for reduction for rear yard setbacks from 20 feet to 5 feet is no longer applicable, based on the definitions in 16.10 of the rear yard. The requested 5-foot setback is now a side yard setback. It shows that the proposed building location on Lot 1 meets the required 20-foot rear yard setback in the very low density residential zone. The applicant provided this view corridor map also that is underlaid with the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. It shows that the view corridor of the existing home to the west and how the proposed subdivision could impact its view. The applicant also provided a revised pattern book that included minor revisions included in the exhibit of this packet. The applicant's consultant stated that the building elevation has been updated to be more complete and better address the styles of homes the applicant would like to build. In reference to Architectural Review Committee was also modified and now references architectural review checklist, which staff can utilize in time during the building permitting stage. Staff has determined that the approval criteria have either been met or can be satisfied as conditions. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval with condition of Denali Lane to City Council. That concludes my staff report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
All right. Does anybody want to start out with any questions they have already crafted? Aye. Go ahead.
In reading some of the correspondence that we received regarding that 5-foot setback on Lot 1, is there a possibility for that to increase further, potentially to 10 feet, just to allow for additional buffering between that lot and potential future other lots?
I guess I would state it a little bit more strongly in that, based on the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan and the concept plan that was done during that time, buffering to the neighboring properties was very important. And I understand that the underlying section allows for a 5-foot setback, but in creating this PUD, we're allowing accommodations that the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan envisioned, which was increasing density but buffering the existing neighborhoods. So in thinking about that, the 5-foot setback doesn't meet the intent of what that code was buffering the neighbors. Either, and I say this with great caution because this is the first of many sections that are going to be coming in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area, and we as a city did not adopt the entire Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, but as things come in under a PUD, I would like to emphasize that the spirit of that concept plan should be carried forward as we do individual PUDs. So, looking to staff to say how, or actually let's look at the commission and say, does anybody else on the commission in favor of maintaining a 5-foot like the underlying zone, or suggesting that the code, the PUD be implement a buffering aspect to it?
I completely agree with both of you. I think the intent of the master plan is pretty clear, and I think that on a 16,000 square foot lot, having a 5-foot setback seems very small. And considering what's likely, or I'm going to say likely, what potentially could be developed on the other side of that property line, and the impact that limited of a setback could have on that future development is not consistent at all with the Southeast Master Plan, in my opinion.
And to take it further, the buffering, I believe, in my opinion, should include the driveways that are there. We should buffer and screen. I mean, I looked at their original drawing that they had done, whatever year it was, on their figure 4B, which I know was in June of last year, and they had 4, which they've changed to 3, and they had the houses closer to the roads. So at some point, someone envisioned the lots being able to access from Denali Lane directly, and so I would express a concern that we're not providing buffering, and they're creating their own hardship by positioning the lots there and forcing an unusual hammerhead on the back of the property.
Chair Simpson and Commission, I just want to caution you, I think it's important that you get these questions out as far as what you can do and how you might be able to do it, but you haven't taken the rebuttal, and it sounds like you're kind of in deliberation, so I just want to caution you not to deliberate but focus on the questions which you're asking. It's a fine line.
Is there I did not realize, I thought the rebuttal was the applicant. I didn't realize they were going to be testifying tonight. Did I misunderstand that?
We still have 10 minutes of rebuttal time if they choose to use it.
Okay. I misunderstood that, so thank you. But I thought this submittal was their rebuttal, so. Okay, so there's a question. Any other questions before we go further?
So I have an additional question then around the view corridor. We talked about that at the first part of the hearing, and I appreciate the updated documents on the view corridor. What I'm seeing here is what could potentially be an impact to the view corridor, and I'm just trying to get a little bit more clarity around what's required as far as maintaining a view corridor according to that master plan, and then how these plans are or are not adequately addressing the view corridor concerns. So I think the new diagrams are very helpful, but also are very worrisome in some aspects.
So is the view corridor part of the Southeast Sherwood master plan, but not part of the adoption of the city council when they incorporated the density?
So there's no criteria in the code for what's required of a view corridor. It just talks about having, the view corridor preserves in the little section that adopted the Sherwood East. It wasn't adopted, but as part of in our development code.
Can we get the language of that?
Yes. It says the view corridors identified in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. So when you look at the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, planned unit development, it's actually on page 290 of the development code. It just lists that one sentence. So it doesn't say necessarily give any criteria.
Okay, so that is part of this process, then we have to help
determine whether that's impeding the view corridor or not.
or we have to establish what we mean by view corridor. Okay, so we don't, at this level, we don't determine if that building's going to do it because the building could change between now and then, but we have to say the view corridor means this.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Staff, I had a question regarding adoption of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. Because it wasn't adopted, is it something that can be done now, or can it not? And if not, why?
It probably could be. It wasn't, and it's been a long time, and I guess I would caution about just saying, okay, there might be changes and tweaks and
Okay.
things like that, just to take it through and formally adopt it. But there was a lot of process. There was public involvement. There was a hearing, I believe several nights of hearing at the Planning Commission level to get the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan accepted by the Planning Commission. So it's, I think it's a valid concept plan, but it wasn't adopted. And I think essentially what the council did by amending the development code to allow this PUD process was sort of acknowledged the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, even though it wasn't formally adopted into a plan.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other staff-specific questions before I inadvertently run back into deliberation? All right, and I apologize for the digression there. That was my fault. I misunderstood. So I don't have any blue cards for who would be.
Close the public.
That's my confusion. I thought we closed it. So do I not have
thought
an
that you
applicant
closed the
rebuttal?
public hearing, but they had until tonight essentially to do the final rebuttal.
Oh, and I thought this was their rebuttal. So that was my misunderstanding. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
All right, so the applicant has 10 minutes to rebut, and we have to make sure that there's no new testimony, correct?
Correct.
Because if new testimony, new information is provided, then we have to reopen the entire public hearing for all participants, correct?
That is correct.
So I call Steve Miller.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for the time tonight. My name is Steve Miller, and I'm with Mario Design. We're at 6445 Southwest Fallbrook Place, Beaverton, 97008. Most of our rebuttal is what we submitted, and it sounds like you guys have looked at that. And I'm really here to try and answer questions to help provide clarity on our proposal and how we got there in relationship to your concerns. And in terms of the setbacks, I think your underlining zoning district is important to pay attention to because that really is what's trying to address buffering and so forth. And the Sherwood Master Plan, the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, since it wasn't adopted, you codified some components of it into your code to help provide some direction for development in this area as it comes in. And so in addition to setbacks, it also said large lots provide buffering from the existing lots. And I think you also need to look at the lot to the west of ours. It's very steeply sloped in that area. And so in terms of people being able to build within a proximity of this home is highly unlikely just due to the topography there and how you would have to provide a street down to that area to get access to the property, similar to the north side of their property as well, to the property to the west. It's very steep on that side of Ironwood. I'm not sure if you've been out there, but that's a very steep hill. It's heavily treed and whatnot. And so I think there are some development limitations in that area to be able to say this home's too close when the other existing home is 150 feet away. What really is realistic there? I'm not sure. I just don't think there's much capability to put much there. In addition, during the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan process, the neighbors in the southwest quadrant of the master plan area indicated that they did not want to redevelop their property. And so they kind of withdrew their properties from the master planning area to say, don't include us because we really don't want to redevelop our property. We're comfortable with how it is. So they looked at the rest of that master planning area to come up with alternative BC. During that planning process, they also identified what they thought were two specific view corridors. One was kind of in the central area of the master plan, and one was in the southwest corner. As part of that master planning process, they tried to provide corridors for the view to Mount Hood. It's pretty clear in the master plan that that was the predominant feature that provided protection. And so for the area in the north, they put in kind of a park area with some open space areas to provide a view shed, if you will, to the east. And then for the property to the west of ours, they identified that the view is kind of to the north, as we showed in the view corridor exhibit there. And so really, you know, as someone who's trying to prepare a proposal for this particular area of the city, we have to rely on these documents to provide us with some type of guidance so we can try and provide a plan that meets the intent to the greatest extent practicable. And so we provided a lot of open space on the north end of Lot 1 to help protect that view corridor and put the homes to the south. And also when you develop property, you have to look at doing it economically. And when you have sloped terrain, it's important to take advantage of that and not fight it, which is why on lots 1, 2, and 3, we've pushed the homes to the back because it's really impractical to put the street in with the contours that we're trying to fit into and then have to go up a rock hill, which would really add significant cost. So what you're seeing there is a way to develop this area, take all the topography constraints into consideration, and locate homes that make the most sense from an efficiency standpoint. And so, again, we moved them to the south. We have a nice hill behind us to provide some buffering. Only one home is set there at the side yard setback line. The other ones are a little bit further away. And I think we've done a pretty good job of providing protection there for that view corridor. So, and I think from what you saw too, our architectural pattern book has been revised to try and better address the styles that you have here in Sherwood. So I think there's kind of maybe a little question, do we want a flat roof? Do we not want a flat roof? Some of the comments that came in from the other folks said, you know, maybe flat roofs isn't so bad to help protect that view corridor on some of these lots. And so maybe we can blend some styles here to come up with something that works. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is listen to you folks, put a proposal together that meets the Southeast Master Plan to the highest degree possible, put in a street that has a nice calming device to it with the curve. So the people to the south who are worried about cut-through traffic, you know, when you put a curve into a street, it really does slow down and creates a traffic calming effect. So people will not be going probably at the speeds that are anticipated if it was straight through. So I think those are some of the key issues that you guys had. If I can, I'll preserve 5 minutes of my time just to respond to anything that you guys might have on the plan so I can help you better understand why we did what we did. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant and the, I guess anything that they've submitted already?
We're good?
I think all the questions were answered in your submittal and your testimony. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That officially closes all the public testimony, and now we will allow for questions of staff and deliberation. All right. What do people want to tackle first regarding this PUD?
Well, since we're still talking or recently addressed regarding this 5-foot setback on Lot 1, you know, I do have some confusion regarding it because if the Southeast Master Plan states that buffering is essential or a requirement, but doesn't give any concrete measurements or parameters, and the difference is what's in the code stating, you know, minimum 5 feet. Is that acceptable? And the other question that I did have, Mr. Miller did address regarding the potential likelihood of another structure being built right up to that additional setback as well. So,
I'm sorry, what was the other question?
No, I was just saying you
answered the question.
You answered an additional question I had regarding how close could another structure be built to that structure on Lot 1. So
on that point, Can I?
Sure.
Just because you're right on it. Looking at the cross sections that were submitted on the view 11 and 11A, if that sloping seen on 11A is accurate, then it would appear to me that the property to the west of that lot slopes no more and perhaps even less than the home site that proposed house with the limited setback is being built on. So it seems to me that if they could build a house on that slope, a house could also be built on the slope adjacent to it that's no more sloped, and looking at this looks even less sloped than the site that they're proposing that home would go on. So I'm a little unclear on the accuracy of that statement. And also I'm a little unclear on whether, how much weight we should put into that, because it's property that may or may not be developed in the future, but it's someone else's property. So someone testifying as to how someone else might, develop their property in the future is a little bit squishy to me.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I'm not using good language. But.
No, I agree. I can't. Yeah, I understand squishy. I also understand not telling how someone else can develop their property or not, because you're right. Looking at lot 7 on the submitted plans they provided, it's on a very, very steep slope. It's in the red. So that being aside, I think I would like to ask the commission to look at what this PUD means, as it's the beginning of this. I guess, and maybe if I'm wrong, let me know. This is one of the first areas to be developed within the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. And, PUDs being individual of their own, but this being a unique area within our community, we're setting a precedent of how things are going to be addressed in this area. I mean, the next commission that comes through on the next PUD in the same area could come up with a different set of findings, but I wouldn't want them to look back at our decision and say, well, last time they did this, we should be okay to do it this time. And I've had great concerns and angst over not complying with what the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan had with buffering, and I don't think 5 feet. I mean, if you look at our pictures from the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, all the houses that were in that area, and I realized they were little cartoon drawings, all pushed everything away from the neighbors. And I don't believe we would be doing justice by allowing the underlying code language to dictate a buffering zone in this PUD. I think that to comply with the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, we should establish a buffering that is at a minimum the 20-yard setback all the way around. So
20 feet?
What did I say?
You said yards.
20 feet. Sorry. 20 yards would be even more extreme, but so 20 feet at a minimum, and adding that buffering not only is a minimum of 20 feet, that there is a landscaping barrier between the lots that are not part of this development. These people, 1 through 3 and 4 through 7, I don't need them to have a landscape barrier between lots 1 and 2, but between this development and another development we should have. And I would say that's true for any development coming in through Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. This was a very low density residential that was intended to be 1 lot per acre. And they are going to be getting now many more lots per acre so that they can develop it. And so I think in order to protect the integrity of the area, we need to provide what 1 unit per acre would have done, which is lots of buffering and lots of space between the houses.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, a 5-foot setback would be something you would expect to see in, lot sizes of, 5 to 8,000 square foot lots. On lots of this size, it just seems out of character with the intent of the master plan and what the very low residential zone is intended to provide for.
So can we, I guess to take it one piece at a time, general consensus from the Planning Commission to enable staff to take a direction with that is that an appropriate way to handle one task at a time? Because otherwise we're going to get too many changes on the table and we're going to have to discuss them too broadly. So based on that, Chris or Kara, do you have any for or against?
So I think I guess I'm struggling with the fact that we have a code and we have setbacks listed in that code, and I know we have the Southeast Master Plan too. To me, that it feels a little bit like we're making our own rules.
And that's what the PUD.
And and so I kind of feel like, you know, they've met the standards of what the code lays out. I think that they're huge lots. There is potential for another house, I guess, to be right here, but we don't know that that's going to happen. And this is the only lot where that might occur. I was recently over in that area, and I know that by the map, it looks like they're exactly the same in terms of, you know, their elevation. But if you look at it in person, it does seem like if you were going to choose to build on your property, you probably wouldn't pick that spot right next to the house. I'm definitely not an expert. I'm just saying, you know, in my kind of like just walking and looking at the space. So that's what I'm personally struggling with. I think, of course, if it was my home, I would love to have more of a buffering. But if we're sticking to the code, the zoning code, and trying to stay true to that.
All right. And Chris, your take on the PUD, the overlay on the PUD, are you in favor of a buffer?
I'm torn.
Okay. So we'll need to, I would like to ask for a vote on that then. Is that?
Before we do that, so are you requesting that we, through the PUD, dictate that minimum setback on all sides would be 20 feet?
To adjoining properties, correct.
And my question there would be
to parcels not part of the project.
Okay, so not 20 feet within the space between, say, lots 1 and 2.
Right, because that's their own project. They can, I guess that's how I look at it, is that this was intended to buffer to the existing community. Is that how it's reading?
So my question would be, do you, in that, would you also include lots 3 and 4 that abut the existing subdivision?
Right.
Okay.
I don't think there's a problem with 20-foot setbacks all the way around the development.
On lots 3 and 4
And
against
7,
Yeah.
1, and 3.
as long as that's not an issue on 3 and 4, and clearly it's not on the rest.
It's not between lots 1 and 2 or between lots 2 and 3. It's to, I guess it was just to me, for when this development comes in, they're going to protect the existing, and it's not in this language, it's in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, that they're going to protect the neighboring, because it wasn't just the property to the west, it was the properties to the south that wanted to be buffered.
Chair Simpson, if I may, I know that you guys haven't made a vote yet or anything like that, but I did kind of write down as you were talking what, how I could see something going forward, and maybe you guys have done something similar. But I could see, based on your conversation, if the majority of the Planning Commission feels this way, adding a condition to the preliminary PUD approval that says prior to the final PUD approval, demonstrate a 20-foot landscape buffer is provided between this property and adjacent properties outside the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area, which I think is getting at what you were suggesting.
Okay.
inside or outside the master plan area? Because if there's any adjacent properties that are part of the
Well, that's
master plan.
that's for you guys to discuss. That was what I thought I heard Chair Simpson say, but that may not be what she meant.
To add another level of complexity to the discussion is I would potentially be open to maybe splitting the difference a little bit and saying 20 foot front and back, but maybe 15 on the sides or something like that, if that's a little more palatable to other members of the committee. Not to get more complex. But.
So if you want to make a motion or for the proposed language.
Okay. I have to craft the language in my motion.
Referencing Julia's language. It's not the formal, this is we're approving this PUD or not. It's just trying to get, because there's going to be little pieces that we're going to have to talk about. We have to talk about the view corridor, the architectural design book. We have to talk about buffering. And if we try to tackle them all at once, I think we're going to lose it. So I'm just going to try and do sections at a time.
So to me, I'm looking at 15 as if it's 15 on this side, then it's also going to be 15 on the other side. Mm-hmm. So that's 30, and that feels reasonable to me, and it feels maybe it's a little accommodating versus 20 all the way around. But I'm open to rebuttal.
You're saying 15 between anything surrounding the entire site, but in this case, on lot 1, there'd be 15 on the west side, but then on the property adjacent to it, directly to the west, it would be required to have another 15.
Well, we can't do that because it's not part of the PUD.
Well, okay, understood.
Yeah, I think the assumption would be a future commission would probably look at the language that was crafted in this PUD,
assuming that
and try to be consistent with this and the Sherwood Master Plan and probably follow suit. Would be the hope.
I do want to say, if you look at lot 4, the side yard on lot 4 is about 15 feet, which abuts the existing subdivision to the south.
So that seems a reasonable expectation that the applicant could,
I'm just letting you know.
that they've already attempted that buffering by 15 feet, maybe, potentially?
Quite possibly,
We don't know.
potentially.
But, okay, so,
And I just want to clarify, the properties to the west
and south
are not in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. So if those properties were to develop, or if the property to the west were to develop further, it's VLDR, very low density residential, 1 acre lots, with you being able to do, I believe, 2 acres through a PUD, but it's not governed by that.
They could build 1 acre lots without any necessary PUD or other site plan approval. I mean, they have to get site plan approval, but no, they could just build 1 acre lots. If they wanted to do anything more than that, they would have to go through the same process
That is correct.
that this development is going
But
through.
they're not going to get the same density that this project gets because this project is in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area.
Could that property be brought into the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area? If
anything,
Anything can be done.
I'm just trying to understand the full landscape.
it could be added, couldn't it? If council chooses.
Anything's possible. I'm not quite sure how it would be done, but it's probably possible.
So does your language enable, Julia, can you restate your language?
Demonstrate a 20-foot landscape buffer is provided between this property and adjacent properties outside the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area. So basically what that does is not require it to properties
To the north.
Right, between their own properties.
So I would propose we would change that to 15 feet.
And that's your
then I'll
motion?
Make a motion on it.
Okay, is there a second?
No. I was going to actually make a motion.
Oh, I thought that was your motion.
I move that we adopt that language with the edit of changing from 20 feet to 15 feet.
Do we have a second before we discuss it?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
So my point of discussion
Yes.
is given what we have before us, would any other commissioners feel that 10 feet is acceptable versus 15? Was my thought.
Okay.
Or a counterpoint, do you feel that 10 feet is not providing significant enough buffering
Right, I was happy with 20 and going to 15, so, yeah, so I'm just trying to provide a buffer, and what's an appropriate buffer? 10 feet, you know, can they put enough landscaping in there that trees will block lights, neighbors, whatever, with an expectation that you went from a 20 to 40,000 square foot lot to a 10,000 square foot lot to then the house being put right next to the property lines, so that's the buffering.
And, you know, according to the topographical map, it seems like it, you know, the grade that's being demonstrated to us here seems like that change should be possible, even to the 15 foot. I'm not opposed necessarily to the 15 foot. I'm just curious.
Yep. All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion on the buffer? Chris, anything?
I'm more leaning to just leave it alone.
And let it be 5 feet?
Just let it be 5 feet. I can't even tell you a good reason. She stated that, you know, even if you were to put that house there with that buffer, the 5 foot buffer, if someone were to come in, they're not going to build a house that close anyway. They're going to want their own buffer. It just doesn't seem. I think we're just making it too big of it.
So,
what I feel.
on that, I think that's a good point, Chris, and it makes me want to ask something. So, regarding what was sent in via correspondence and provided at the last meeting, Julia, given what you said regarding VLDR, and even if the property adjacent to the west went through the PUD process, could they divide into this many lots?
Is there like 7 or 8?
Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
14 what?
Where are you looking?
Well, they're imaginary lines, right?
Yeah.
Are you looking at within the red or that whole?
I'm looking at
Area.
the whole area.
The red is the
but
Walker.
Oh, okay. So within the
Yeah.
red, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and kind of two halves.
Two halves.
But even the east side of that is what we're really talking about. The east part of
So
that.
I'm not sure what it is that you're looking at. Is there a page in the packet that I can reference?
Yeah, it's Exhibit A.
Page 34-ish. Page 34.
Yeah.
You can borrow mine.
If that's not even possible, then your point is really good, Chris. So, well,
Are those representative of 1 acre lines? And we can't take any more, we can't take,
What that is, I just want to clarify what you're looking at. So you
we
know what
can't
you're
take
looking
any
at.
more public testimony, I'm sorry. We can-
Yeah, what I don't know is if that's, if that's reflective of half-acre lots. It looks, they're certainly larger than the lots that you're seeing in the Denali PUD subdivision.
Yeah.
So I would guess that they are half-acre.
Which is
lots,
what they would be
potentially.
allowed to build under their own PUD in there.
Right, through a PUD.
Right, so they could build
so this is
potentially,
potentially possible. Okay.
correct. So that's how they would,
But it's not the only potential,
yeah, not the only
possibly.
one.
I think, to me, I think it's important that we codify that protection. Like we keep,
buffering.
rather than just assume that
Yeah.
it won't be a problem later. It may or may not be, but I think this is our opportunity to make sure that it isn't, by increasing that buffer to something that I think is within the intent of the master plan.
So we have a motion on the table. We have a motion. The motion is for incorporating a 15-foot buffer to the surrounding properties not within the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. So we will look to staff to codify that. We'll move next into the view corridor and what that means within the PUD. It's not, it's part of the master plan. It's mentioned and testified about, and the applicant provided information about it, so I'm looking to staff to say how best do we codify what was intended within the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, if that's what the commission desires to put forth. Because again, it's not just this piece of property, it's the views for the rest of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan that was intended to have in there.
This one.
Yeah. So does our code as it stands have language in there that would enable us in final site plan review to quantify what the view corridor is?
So what you see in that slide. Sorry. So what you see in that slide is the actual view corridor in the Sherwood East master plan, like overlaid onto that lot. There's no criteria stated in the code for how that view criteria should be preserved or what it should look like.
In other jurisdictions, view corridors, I know there's one in the city of Portland that's coming up right now because they're trying to build taller buildings in an area that were originally designated to be stair-stepped so that their view is protected. Is
Right.
that...
So one of the things that that you could look at is in their architectural design book, they do have some housing in there that has a flatter roof that preserves, that would preserve more of the visual corridor in that regard. You could look at a condition stating that a more contemporary or modern style home with that roof line shall be built on that lot.
I was looking towards it shall not exceed X number of feet over...
So we do have a building height standard in our code, which they've met it. It's 30 feet.
Right.
Or 2 stories.
30 feet or 2 stories.
And 30 feet is, because it's on a steep slope, the midpoint of the side wall. Because 30 feet from the front is different than 30 feet from the back.
That's right.
So it's 30 feet from the midpoint. So potentially the front of the building could be 40 feet and the back could be 20 feet, or the maximum at any place is 30 feet.
I think you should make Kirsten talk. She does all of our plot plan reviews.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I need your code.
You know what? I do this as public humiliation, trying to be right and trying to help out, and so you're at least smart and have done actual details. And I'm sorry also.
And while she's looking for that, I guess I'll add on that I think the view corridor can, as Erica and Joy said, be whatever you define it to be. It could be, there shall be nothing, there shall be no trees, there shall be no
Right.
structures, or so you could be, that could be how you interpret view corridor in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, or it could just be, keep it open, you're not completely blocking it, or roof heights, so there's things that I think are within the realm of what you need to interpret. And I think it is important to say this is what we believe this to mean, so that when we come back for their final and for building permits, that we're actually knowing what we're holding them to.
Right now, I don't want to dictate which house they put where. I want to know that when their house comes in, it's going to preserve the view corridor that we've defined.
On that note, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So looking at what we're looking at on the screen right now, this is a very helpful slide to me. So looking at the original BC plan view of the master plan and the view corridor that's defined there by the dotted lines running, diagonally, what I see on that plan was that none of the structures or proposed structures intersected that view corridor at all, both 1, 7, and then the house north of 1 proposed house or shape or whatever you want to call it. It's not a house yet. None of those cross into the view corridor at all, whereas their overlay of their plan, the lot 1 now does. And so that to me is what I see looking at this. And then when you look at sheet 11A, the elevations, which is the the A prime elevation, the A to A prime elevation, I believe is correct. Let me just double check that. Yes, the A to A prime elevation, you can see that house there, proposed house there in lot 1, seems to me it would clearly impact the view through that view corridor, and at least in that section or that little corner of the house that crosses over the dotted line into the view corridor. So maybe the 15-foot buffer is already going to solve this because it's going to have to get moved over, but we should make sure.
Right, so view corridor as shown on BC plan, no building shall encroach upon that. And I guess I would say that if the back of the lot, their personal, because they're going to be built up to the lot. Because I was thinking if they built at the bottom of the hill, if they decided that they wanted to change and build at the bottom of the hill, and the top of their house stayed below the top grade of their own lot. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the top grade of this lot is at, my best guess is 330 feet, and if they move to the front part of the parcel, that's down to 300 feet. So they could technically move it to the front of the it could be
It could cross the dotted line if it was lower.
if it was below the top grade of their own lot.
Yeah.
Is that quantifiable? Because I'm saying if they moved lot 1 completely away and they put it down next to Denali Lane, they could put it in any
in the
place
view
in the
lane.
dotted line as long as the top of the building is not any greater than the top of the slope of their own lot.
I have a
I
question.
totally understand what you're saying.
And so let's say, yeah. So if they move the house, let's say they put it down here in between
Less than the 300 and
30 feet. But I don't want to name a number because I'm looking at little teeny tiny numbers on a applicant submittal versus staff having a.
So essentially, the top of the house would either have to be below the highest point of that property line, or the house would have to be outside of the view corridor, one or the other.
So if they moved the house right here, as long as it was lower than, because this is the top of the hill. So if the entire house that ends up in the view corridor is below this, it doesn't impact the view at all. So they can build in this dotted line as long as it doesn't block the view.
So I think based on the 15-foot setback, they're already going to have to push it back, and they're going to have to push it back this way, right? So it's going to move it significantly out of that dotted line already. And we heard earlier from the applicant that there was consideration of putting like a ranch-style home there, possibility of doing a flat roof. So I think there are ways. It's not for sure that it's going to be a 2-story right up front. I think the 15-foot is going to ensure it's not right up front because they have no choice but to push it back that way.
And if it is a 2-story, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 2-story in that section. Yeah.
Right. So, Anybody want to craft a motion to get the view corridor defined by staff?
I think Julia has something for
Does
us.
Julia?
Something?
You can go first.
It's kind of clunky.
You guys can clean it up later.
Versus me crafting it
And this
on the
was
fly.
me writing, and you guys may have switched what you were saying as I was writing, so it might not have captured everything you said. Bear with me. No structure on Lot 1 shall be located within the view corridor or shall have a roof height no taller than the top of grade of the western property line in order to preserve the view corridor shown in BC of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan.
Nice.
I couldn't have asked for
I
it.
move for that.
That was good.
Is there a
I
second?
think that
I
is good.
second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we ask staff to incorporate the view corridor language crafted by Julia.
You guys could have got me
Miss
to
Miss
move it.
Hyduke. All right, any further discussion?
I just wanted to ask quickly, so what's shown between the dotted lines and what we're talking about is the view corridor, that's only specific for this property
But there's a,
to the west, right?
right, but there's a view corridor also in another part of the development for the next PUD that comes
Okay,
in
for another existing property?
for the rest of the development up top.
It's outside the scope of this PUD.
Yeah, okay.
Right, but if we're going to set
This is
precedent,
applying to that,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
all right.
So you're saying that we'll carry on?
It may not.
It may not.
It may not, but the next PUD comes
Because
in.
it sounds
it's a-
specific to
Right.
lot 1. Didn't you
Yeah.
say lot 1?
It is
was-
specific
It's
to
super
lot
specific.
1.
Do we want to make it apply to the entire Southeast Sherwood master plan that
We can't,
doesn't
we can
exist?
only apply to, we can only
Okay.
apply it to this development.
Okay.
We can only apply to this PUD.
I think that what you're establishing there, though, is that within the view corridors in the BC, Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, there can't be structures or, I mean, I think you're, through the words, even though it's specific to this lot, you're saying,
And you can
That's
take out,
precedent.
you could take out the word lot 1.
right, right.
So there's a friendly amendment out there to remove the words lot 1 on that.
Agreed.
All right.
Would you like me to repeat what the?
Let me
Can
see
you
if I have
please-
let me see if I have a second.
Okay.
The amendment.
I need
second it.
I need the seconder to take a friendly amendment on the removal of the words lot 1. Do you agree to?
Yes.
Okay, so if you would restate it, we have a
So,
motion for that.
Keeping in mind, for the record and the public, that we're talking about the view corridors that are actually identified in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. It says, no structure shall be located within the view corridor or have a roof height no taller than the top grade of the western property line to preserve the view corridor shown in BC of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan.
All right, that's the current motion. Everybody in favor of staff crafting language in the final language to city council? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passed. Next items are the architectural design book as revised. So the revised pattern book that we're looking at is the one that was submitted, I believe, on under the January 30th cover that has the new contemporary transitional modern traditional. So I would like to ask staff a question as it specifically relates to this. The pictures say building elevations conceptual. Bless you. However, the building design language that's on page 3 of this submittal doesn't specifically state that they will follow the designs as submitted, and they don't provide any specifics regarding what architectural features or design criteria they're going to use. It says they'll comply with defined CC&Rs specific to the project, but I don't believe we've been given copies of the CC&Rs. No duplicate elevation. And
I also say
Did
that.
you-
Go ahead.
we keep doing that.
I was gonna say you guys are like in sync.
Yes. I do like the mention here of the architecture of each home complementing the existing homes. I think that was a good addition. I think that's something that,
Are you talking about the ones that were added?
Well, this is
number 4.
number.
B.
They have it in their building design. It says the architecture of each home shall complement existing homes and the topography of each lot. And in being familiar with the area just south of it, almost every home looks just like the traditional.
Yeah, I actually drove through there, and everything is either traditional at best, potentially transitional, but
Early American.
Early American.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
everything that's existing there is very much the 3 examples on the right, most especially the 2 lower examples on the right.
So, my first question being, because their language doesn't have call out for any specific design criteria and the building elevation pictures themselves are conceptual, do we have any, what would staff look at when the final site plan comes in to confirm that it meets the design criteria of the architectural design book?
So we would look at the building elevations and look at to see if it's a traditional, early American, or a low-pitched traditional. And then they have also included the types of materials that would be used on the homes and presented different siding materials, masonry materials, exterior lighting, overhead doors. We would look at the paint colors that they provided. And then they provided a checklist. So we would go down that checklist with each building permit submitted and look to see where they're meeting the elements in this pattern book that they provided.
So as an example, I don't know what composite paneling is, but that doesn't look like the natural wood or stone that the rest of the neighboring community has. So if we say that the rest of these materials seem to fit, but in order to accept this design, architectural design pattern book, we need to remove composite paneling, are we able to make to that level of detail statements and to say the color palette is appropriate with the exception of stark white because stark white doesn't exist in the neighboring? I guess I'm just asking. I'm giving bad examples. I could have said if they had had a purple cracker house in here, that wouldn't have met, and could we just draw an X through it? Can we do that as part of refining their design pattern book for them?
Yeah, I think so. If you feel like that composite paneling doesn't meet the intent or the neighboring characteristics of the neighborhood.
Or that, even just to say that the composite paneling the house can't contain more than 10%. I mean, it's nice to have a different breakup, but to have.
I mean, that's entirely out of character with what is the properties that are there already, referring to the composite
I
paneling.
guess it comes down to how much weight does number 4 carry when you get into the approval, right? So each home should complement existing homes. I'm asking a question.
So, and that's the question, that if they bring in 7 houses that have that look like contemporary houses that have all composite paneling and are painted stark white, because it's in the pattern book, we accepted the pattern book, and then we have to accept everything that comes in like that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say that when this is reviewed, it's reviewed by Kirsten, who I'm not going to make talk, but she will look for PUDs, look at the architectural pattern book, and she will make sure that it has the things that it says it's supposed to have. So for example, with the Cedarbrook PUD, I think it said it needs to have 3 different materials and varying colors, and there were a few that they weren't varying enough, and she's like, yeah, that's not enough. But for the most part, it's not, it's really a black or white. You either have 3 different materials or you don't have 3 different materials. You either have 10% of something or you don't have 10% of something. So whatever, if you want staff to make a call, you need to tell staff what call it is that they're making.
And the statement says the architecture of each home should complement existing homes. And I've heard concern from commission that nowhere within community and the neighboring houses does contemporary or modern exist. And they might bring in something that could complement it if they change their design to make it look transitional or traditional. But that would be putting it on Kirsten to figure out if a contemporary house matches the architecture of existing homes. That's what that's the question.
And maybe it's, and I'm just sort of having the conversation, maybe it's, you guys don't worry about the architecture and you worry about the materials. And as long as the materials are compatible, maybe that's okay. Or maybe you don't care about the materials and you only care about the architecture. You know, so I mean, that might be a way of thinking about it is, are those more modern styles concerning if you have elements that are taking from nearby homes, which I think what I'm hearing, and I don't disagree with you.
Well, even that contemporary one, to me, it actually looks like it's got a lot of the elements.
Right, because it's got wood, stone.
It's got wood, the stone, it just, I think it would fit.
But if they did it with a composite paneling.
Right, that's outside of what the existing neighborhood is.
But architecturally, contemporary and modern are completely different than what's there. So does that, even with similar materials, does that make it enough that what's new would be out of character?
I think that using the same materials would blend it, it would be fine.
I agree.
I think
That's what's going to make it blend.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also welcome variation. I think in the city of Sherwood right now, we have a lot of the same styles. And I think if we could have some of this variation in there, I think that would be a very attractive feature for the city. I think if we could do it responsibly, so maybe not, to your point, like black composite panels with bright white, rest of the home, that would obviously not fit in. But if we do these, more natural colors, a little bit more toned down, not too extreme, I think it would be a really nice addition to the community, and like I said, I would welcome the variation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think our focus should be on the materials and the colors. I get a little uncomfortable in dictating architectural style. If that's what people want to build and buy, then I kind of have a hard time dictating that as long as it blends in, and I think the blending in is more on what you said, the materials and the colors.
Okay. So
another question, given the applicant's statements during the previous hearing, where it was clear to me that their intent was essentially to build essentially only contemporary and modern on these 7 lots. I think it's important for us that we either include some type of condition that ensures that there's a range of what is demonstrated in the pattern book will be built among the 7 lots, or in order to ensure that the new homes blend in with the existing homes better, doing something where lots 4, 5, 6, and 7 conform to transitional, traditional, or early American, whereas lots 1, 2, and 3 could take from contemporary modern or low-pitch traditional That way they can also take advantage of the lower pitched roofs on the higher elevation properties. And that way that also ensures that we get a mix of housing that blends better with the existing neighborhood.
So, just as a point of clarification, I seem to remember from the applicant that the proposal was not to build all contemporary and modern, but that those were styles that were popular, and that the proposal was more to do maybe 3 lots that would be contemporary modern and others that would transition better.
I remember it differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I
I
remember.
was surprised by what was stated.
Okay.
So.
I think the statement was that he added the traditional at the bottom, otherwise we wouldn't have accepted his architectural design book.
And my concern of that is that, as I understand it, if we accept this architectural design book with all of these examples, and the applicant comes in and everything is, say all 7 lots are contemporary homes, because it's in the pattern book, we have to accept it.
So, I mean, okay, so by weight of B4, under organization and use, we could say, right, that if we put, going to use our extreme example again, a modern home, black and white, on lots 3 or 4 that are right there. Right? We could say that that does not complement the existing homes. That is like 2 very different thing. And I think we could come back and say that. We would have power to come back and say that. I don't know. I feel a little weird about dictating exactly what house goes where, because then.
I remember the applicant making a statement that they weren't even sure they would build any modern, and if they did, it might only be 1. To me, that's the one that is the most.
Well, that's not what was said in the minutes.
Okay.
Either.
It was. I know he said they testified multiple times, and I think one of the times he testified, I thought I remembered hearing him say that. Be that as it may, to me, that is the style that is the most of an outlier here. I look at all 5 of the other ones. I mean, clearly anything on the right could fit in with the existing neighborhood. But I even look at the contemporary and the low-pitch traditional and think, okay, with the right materials and the right colors, those would blend in fairly well in my view. To me, the modern is the one that's the outlier, and if we just strike that and go with the other 5, I could live with that. And then with the caveat that we're also looking at some of the materials and colors later. That's just my view.
I mean, I would.
It's a modern home, modern, and a contemporary home.
I was just going to ask that because they look the same
Because they look
to
the
me.
same to me. The only thing that's throwing you off is the materials. They're not the ones that we would want on that modern house. You add stone to it, and I would like it.
Contemporary and modern are synonyms for each other. So.
It just doesn't make I think
That's
we're
an excellent
really
question.
just looking at materials.
Well, and so that's
colors.
if B4, say in the extreme example that the applicant comes in with all 7 consisting of contemporary and modern designs, if B4 gives us the flexibility to say, this is out of character with the existing community and more transitional, traditional, or early American low pitch traditional needs to be incorporated, then that's okay. But that's not my understanding of how it would be if we don't condition it and if we approve the pattern book as is.
Is that a question
Well,
for? Well, I think B4 is part of the pattern book. But
Yeah, I guess I
question
want
for
to stress
staff?
that what is put into the pattern book, and obviously remember it's a recommendation to council. Council will approve the preliminary PUD, which will include the pattern book. Then they'll come back in for subdivision approval, their final PUD approval, sorry. Then, so you're not going to see individual housing plans at that point. When they're ready to submit building permits, they're going to submit building permits to the building department, and Kirsten will look at them and make sure that they're consistent with the pattern book. So she's not going to be able to make a call on whether or not it's compatible. You're telling her through the pattern book what you consider to be compatible.
See, and so that's why I think it's important that we condition that there is some variety within what's demonstrated within the pattern book.
So it says number 2 says each structure shall have an individual and distinctive appearance. We could enforce that we could craft it to say each structure shall have individual and distinctive appearance and include at least 4 of the 6 represented, or something like that, so that they have to include they have to include 4 of the 6 designs that they've submitted.
Say that again?
So the number 2 says each structure shall have an individual and distinctive appearance. My statement is to add and shall contain at least 4 of the 6 representative building elevations. That way they can choose which ones they're building, they can choose how many go where, but at least there is insurances that we will get.
So at the most, you could have 4 of any one style and then
Correct.
1 each of 3 others.
And we go to 5.
Okay.
That way there's at most 3 of any one style.
Oh, I would be careful
that's
though,
too
because
much.
when we start doing that, before you know it, you're gonna say,
Oh, my
we need to have, well, no, I was gonna say, you're gonna be putting one of each type of house in, and then it doesn't
Gonna
flow
be a-
together at all.
I was going to
So-
say go to 3.
Yeah.
To me, it just seems like the developer or the builder, they're not gonna put in 6 different houses. They wanna sell the houses, and it's gonna be they know that a neighborhood needs to be
Cohesive.
cohesive. They're not just gonna go in there and say, I want one of everything just to do it. And so, I mean,
Could we say something like, a modern or a contemporary?
Are the same thing.
They're probably not if we were like well educated in
It's
that,
the
but
windows,
we're
I
not. But could we say something like, we can't have a contemporary or a modern on lots 3 and 4, and then everything else?
Yes. Yeah.
Just to ensure that we have some sort of a transitional period, and then perhaps they move it out even more and they only do a modern on 7. But
And then we
would that be?
And then we include Gene's language of 4, including 4 out of the 6, or only that lots 3 and 4 cannot consist of contemporary and modern.
We're gonna get at least 2.
We're
We're
houses right here, right? This is the old neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's houses there.
Yep, exactly.
I'd prefer just the lot 3 and 4 designation myself and leave the rest open. But
Okay.
I could also live with 3 different styles minimum.
Yeah, I wouldn't go.
I think 4 is
above
too
3.
restrictive.
So 3, and then 3 different styles, and then 3 and 4 cannot be contemporary or modern.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a general head nod on that one.
General
Yes.
head.
General head nod.
General head.
Okay. And then to, I think Chris's point, building materials is the most important part of this.
Yeah. So I think we should X out that composite paneling.
Okay. And I don't see a reason to keep it, except that, if it's no more than 10%, if they have to have it. I mean, I don't know.
So limit it with the percentages.
Yeah, I was
Don't-
going
don't they-
to go in somewhere like that.
I mean, when you use it,
I mean, that material's not in the existing community anywhere at all. I'm fine getting rid of
But,
it.
I mean, using it as an accent or something, if it fits the rest of
That-
the design of the house, I could live with.
But that would be that would so not complement the existing.
To
But
me,
it is
that
a-
reminds
it is
me
a-
of our industrial buildings. That's
Yeah.
what it doesn't remind me of the house.
Yeah.
So,
I like the percentage limitation personally myself. I think this is a different subdivision than the additioning one. I don't think we should try to shoehorn them into matching the neighbor to the south completely, giving them some amount of leeway. But
We're giving them all that flexibility.
I'll let them have the garages,
Yeah.
garage doors.
I'm getting silly. So,
all right.
I mean, my preference would be the 10%, or maybe. I don't want to get too restrictive, but if you guys all feel strongly otherwise, then
Yeah, what's the poll? What do you say, Chris?
I mean, look at that. It's crazy. I say just take it out.
Kara?
We have Sherwood
Yeah.
lists we can play with.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I would vote to take it out, at least for this. I think once you get further down, it might, depending on how it continues to build down, it could have a home eventually, but I don't think quite in this one.
You know,
Gone.
Gone?
Yeah.
And you?
I was at the 10% allowance, but sounds like I
What
lose.
is it that you're striking? Sorry. I'm-
Composite paneling.
Thank you.
Siding material.
Allowing the building elevations, but making sure that the natural wood, brick, stone is complementary to the existing, and removing composite paneling based on forehead nods. All right. Staff has that. Are we? And then last is, I don't know anything about overhead doors and lights and exterior colors. No one's else is having concerns.
I don't have concerns with any other items in the pattern book.
Does anybody else have any other concerns in the pattern book?
Regarding entry doors, there's 5 examples. 4 of them are modern and or contemporary. Would we care for something that's a little bit more balanced?
Oh, I see. There's overhead doors and there's entry.
Oh,
doors.
sorry. So I'm looking at entry doors.
Okay.
Really? Oh, are these entry doors?
Yeah.
So there's 2 on the bottom.
And then 3 on the other side. So the first one, is more traditional, and then the 4 following after are.
I think they're all good.
I think if it fits with the house, it fits with the house. And
Yeah. I don't have a.
So this checklist that's in this book was created by the applicant? Is it, or
By the Amario design.
Correct.
And is this something similar to what staff would do on other building permits as they come in?
Right. So if there's a PUD with a pattern book, you have to meet the guidelines within the pattern book.
And just for the record, I'm just looking at this, and it looks like the checklist is there, but they're still on the bottom, Architectural Review Committee use, and I would recommend that just for the record, you note that that won't be part of the checklist, that there isn't an Architectural Review Committee.
Okay.
On page 12.
Okay, so we're removing the architectural review committee use. This is the architectural, it's supposed to be architectural checklist.
Correct.
Can I just skip back real quick to page 3, number 5? It reads, each structure shall be constructed to maximize the use of the lot with orientation toward the front property line. That seems inconsistent with the proposal that 3 of the houses will not be oriented toward the front property line.
If I recall correctly, that was due to the, that it would be really difficult to build towards the front of those property lines.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that the language that
That's what they're calling
That-
for.
Yeah.
they seem to be contradicting themselves in this second half of that sentence.
I wonder if what they
Yeah.
mean is like we have with our commercial design standards, that the front of the building is facing the street, and so they have a front, so that
So the driveway would be in the back of the house.
the driveway's in the back of the house, but what looks like the front of the house is facing
Facing
Denali, so that Denali has a view that's good. It's not just the back door.
So these are essentially
I don't know if that's what they're proposing or not.
So it's a 4-sided. Is that? I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's going to be great for the community. That they're going to actually be beautified and front facing to Denali.
I think that's a good point, that if it's not, we should.
Otherwise, it couldn't pass the checklist.
Otherwise, you're looking at the back of the houses.
Right. So have a concern with it?
Well, I guess my question is that, was that their intent? Was that the front of the front of the house from a look standpoint would be facing Denali, and in that case, number 5 works. If their intent is that the driveway side of those 3 lots is the front of the house, then it could never meet number 5.
So each
They never
structure
pass.
should maximize the use with the lot with orientation towards. Does the front property line mean Denali?
That's my understanding from the code we read last
Yeah,
time.
based
Okay.
on what we.
Okay.
I mean, is the recommendation to modify B5 to what we know is going to be true, or is it?
I don't
say
have
that
a
we need-
recommendation, more of a question.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
if this language stands, then a proposal could not pass this language that had the front of the house oriented toward the driveway.
And
So if that's their intent, is to have the front of the house oriented toward Denali, then fine, this language works. But if that's not their intent, then something needs to happen with this language, or we need to make it their intent. Or whatever.
Should we be
It's a good
should we be
call-out.
clear and just call out Denali Lane on number 5?
The applicant didn't provide that information in the narrative, whether the, front of the house was going to be, facing Denali or
but they did in their pattern book.
the,
Number 5 says each structure shall be constructed to maximize the use of the lot with orientation towards the front property line. So we're calling it out and saying, just to confirm, they're gonna have the best side of the house always facing Denali, even though the driveway's coming in from the other side.
you
Or
could
let's
call it
condition
out.
it.
That's
That's what you're asking, right?
I'm asking, yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is that the intent? Because that's the way it reads to me.
That's how I'm reading it.
And we can't get confirmation because it would be new testimony. So,
Right.
so we're stuck at the point. So let's just condition it then.
That it says that constructed maximize the use of the orientation towards the front property line facing Denali Lane.
I'm trying to be a little fair to the applicant, because if this wasn't their intent and we codify this, we're forcing them into that.
Just as a reminder, you're not codifying anything, you're making a recommendation to council.
And
And
they
as is, it is reading, I think the way you are all reading it, which is that it's going to be oriented towards the front property line. And if you leave it as they proposed it, and they suddenly realize after the hearing is closed that maybe what they proposed isn't what they want, they certainly can talk to council and say, hey, we love planning commission's recommendation, but we just want to tweak to this architectural pattern book, and the council can certainly do that. So
So even though we struck composite paneling,
They can add that.
they can
absolutely can.
council can add it
You are
right back
making
in.
a recommendation to the council based, and I think that, they are listening and they respect that you guys put a lot of time and energy into this. But it is a recommendation to the council based on all that you've heard, and they will take that recommendation and do with it what they will.
Okay.
Russell's going to change everything.
And they've done it.
And they have. Sometimes they
Okay.
have other information that's brought forth, because it's a de novo hearing at the city council, correct? So, de novo means that everybody gets, even if you didn't testify here and you came up with an idea, it's a brand new hearing, de novo, and everybody gets an opportunity to testify all over again. Proponents, opponents, applicant, whomever wants to spend their minutes in front of the council providing additional testimony, they can do it all over again. So back to, and just, we changed the language on 2 a little bit, right? Do you have that written down someplace? Individual and distinctive appearance.
Utilizing a minimum of 3 of the architectural styles
Okay.
presented, and with lots 3 and 4 not containing modern or traditional, or modern or contemporary.
Oh, that is awesome. Because what's going to happen is they're going to type something up and they're going to make me sign something before they send it to council, and I missed a couple of notes. Okay. All right. So are there any other concerns that people brought forth to,
So did we have, so on number 5, did we add toward the front property line?
My understanding is we're
Denali Lane?
leaving 5 as is for now.
because front property line by our code is Denali Lane.
Okay, well, as long as that, so if the applicant comes in and tries to change
Council.
that before council, will council know our concern or issue regarding number 5?
Do we have one?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, making it clear that,
We could put comma Denali Lane.
I would assume that they'll have notes of this
minutes.
meeting.
Because then based on definition,
okay,
So I guess, though, that's the next question, though. Is our intent to
I would like to make it clear.
make, but is our intent to make it so that the house orients toward Denali Lane? Mm-hmm. Okay.
That would be mine.
Okay. I didn't realize we had that discussion.
It's just that's the side that's going to be viewed from, from it as a community. So
Okay.
that's.
So I only had another, the last concern had to do with the screening of the hammerhead. Is that part of this? Not necessarily part of this process, because we're just addressing setbacks and buffering. Okay.
If there's a concern that you would like to address as part of buffering surrounding the hammerhead, we can just discuss that issue. And this is the time to bring it up because they're going to come back with the final development site plan.
Give them the opportunity to fix it.
Okay. So did anybody else have any concerns about the hammerhead screening to the neighboring property? I know it's,
What is the proposal to do at that point?
we don't have any
Okay.
further information other than the statement that the applicant testified that there's a change in grade and so the lights wouldn't impact.
Well, I thought there was,
I read
there was a
4 feet.
fence.
There's, correct. So there is a 4-foot wall, retaining wall, and
Okay.
that is on the back of lots 2 and 3.
Okay.
And what is that retaining wall?
So because they've submitted that site plan information, that can't change?
Right.
Okay. Then that. And then the staff report, there's a typo on the original staff report, page 59, on the findings. These standards are not met. It says not me. They're not me. And then
On page
it's on,
7.
A little personal there.
it's our original staff report, page 59. 53 of 66, actually, sorry. It's under public and private utilities, the finding on 16-118-020. It's not me. And then on the final staff analysis on page 62 of 66, services, it's Clean Water Services comments state. There's an extra S. Services comments states. It should be state. Yeah.
I do want to clarify also in the addendum staff report, there were also some typos.
Oh my goodness.
It is very specific to page 3 of 7, and it talks about number 3. It talks about lot 2, and it is really specific to lot 1. So all the references in that section should be,
Okay, I'm lost. Just a second.
okay, page 3 of 7
Oh, I have 5 of 5.
of the addendum. Staff report,
Oh my gosh, I
February
was
13th.
The
Oh,
new
I-
staff report.
I went to the next hearings, page 5.
3 of 7?
Yep, page 3 of 7, item number 3.
Oh,
By reducing
lot
the rear, it should
1.
be lot 1, and
Got it.
also in the staff response, lot 1. We're identifying those errors.
Okay.
Then on page 2 of 7, under, towards the bottom, the last staff response on that page, Murdoch, is Murdock.
Bruno?
So the last question I have was kind of addressed in the staff, but I don't, poor Bob's still here. The person that testified to the property to the west asking for access across A, do the actions that we take tonight preclude them from having the ability to access it? My reason for asking this is I understand they have direct access to Murdoch Road, but we've already, Murdoch's a pretty busy road, and if they have the option and they're willing to take access off a side street, wouldn't it be beneficial to the city if they chose to take access from a less?
Generally, I would agree, but there's nothing there that shows me where to place the access. They haven't given me a definitive point saying that you could
But our
take
actions here won't preclude them from taking it?
in the future.
Yes.
No.
So they can, so,
They could come in and say, we've negotiated something with the owners of Tract A to get the access at this point based on the criteria of site distance, spacing standards, and stuff like that. They could negotiate that and get that.
who's gonna own
Tract A.
Tract A? Is that gonna be deeded to the city?
It's going to be maintained by, it's going to be owned by the homeowners association.
Okay, so our actions don't preclude a negotiation between the two parties from doing that, and access to Ironwood Lane would not be stopped by the city.
Correct.
Okay.
I just had a hard time trying to do such a broad condition that really is where, the whole tract becomes part of that condition. I didn't see a place where I could actually do that. I could define it, but my definition would be based on our standards, which would preclude them from saying, well, it doesn't fit with our standard of where we want a road to come out, which they may get if they did a design modification request. If I set it up now and you approve it, it's done. It's there. What happens then? So it's better just to say if they had a definitive place where they wanted to exit onto Ironwood Lane, and they had a layout that they could show me that it meets all the standards, do some work, I think we could do it. I know that I've checked with Joy, and the removal of the open space area, Tract A is part of their open space calculations, that the amount transferred to right-of-way would not negatively impact their open space to the point where they couldn't meet that requirement anymore.
Okay.
So that could be done, but right now, I'm not going to give it a blanket coverage. I don't support that.
Right, it's too vague to be able to define something, but our actions don't preclude it, and it doesn't eliminate, because I see the ability to remove some extra traffic onto Murdoch from a side to taking it to a more controlled intersection would be beneficial to the city at some point if it develops in a manner that would be helpful to the city to do that.
I agree that the spacing standards for another residential street relative to Ironwood Lane, if that site should develop, would come off of Ironwood, really, because the spacing standards for intersections I
Right.
don't believe could be met, but
But it's landlocked otherwise, so,
it's landlocked otherwise, yes.
right. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we weren't preventing a beneficial change in access.
No,
to-
they could get access, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, do we have any other questions of staff? This was a lot of details to go through. Did anybody have any other additional questions or concerns regarding the application? All right, I know someone's probably got some official. Oh, before we do that, staff, have I forgotten to do anything in the order that I was supposed to do it in?
Oh, very good.
Or Josh, have I violated anything that I was supposed to do? Because it's too late now. I am trying to do the best I can. All right.
Okay.
I think Chris is going to make a motion unless you have something else for me to do.
All right. All right, so I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for PA 18 dash, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong, looking wrong line. PUD 17-01 slash SUB 17-01 Denali Lane Plan Unit Development and Subdivision. Based on the applicant's testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report with all of the modifications stated
Through our deliberation.
throughout our deliberation.
Second.
Just for a hearing on March 6th with the City Council.
For a hearing of March 6th to the City Council.
Second.
All right. And just for process purposes, all the modifications that have been approved by the commission this evening will be rewritten up and then sent to me for a signature. Would anybody else on the commission like to review that before?
Yes, please.
I don't think we normally do that, but this is, it's new, and I'd like to see people to have an opportunity to see the process.
I want to see the process, yeah.
I'm the one that has to sign it, but just if you want to see it, that's the process. So
Especially if you go to Cancun, I get one day.
win the lottery and move
Win the
to
lottery, yeah.
Mars. All right. Okay, so it has been moved and seconded that we forward a recommendation of approval for PUD 1701 and SUB 1701 Denali Lane Plan Unit Development and Subdivision for a hearing at the City Council on March 6th. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you very much. Do we need to take a 5-minute break before we do the new business hearings?
Please.
We
do. We will take a, and I think if I hit the gavel, we go off air, maybe? Nope, we're still on air. All right, 5-minute recess. Oh, and commission, planning commission. Oh, I lost the planning commissioner. Oh. Most people can hear me because my voice carries a mile, but that's okay. We have on our agenda two items under the new business, the housing needs analysis and the TSP amendment. And the members of the audience that are here for the transportation system plan, as I understand it. And I would like to ask the commission if they would be willing to change the order of business and hear item C next on our agenda so that those of the public that are here to testify would have an earlier evening.
Do we need a motion and a second?
I need an official motion. Oh,
I move
Mr.
that
Job?
we.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I move that we hear agenda item C before agenda item B.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we change our order of new business to here agenda item C, the TSP, then agenda item B, the housing needs analysis. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we will move into public hearing for the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the Sherwood Transportation System Plan and Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code amendments. There's no file number. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning the Sherwood Transportation System Plan and Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code amendments. The Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will present the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission for staff. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as followed. Applicant will have 30 minutes. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. Then there'll be rebuttal from the applicant, which is the remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then discussion and deliberation by the commission. Just a second. There's a little note that's not in. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone, please make sure the green light is on and depress it for 3 seconds. If it is not, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and speak clearly into the microphone. The Planning Commission is making a recommendation for action by the City Council, and their hearing is tentatively scheduled for March 6th. Planning Department is also the applicant, correct?
Correct. City of Sherwood.
It's all right. You're up.
So what you have before you tonight are proposed plan amendments to the city's transportation system plan. The application number is 1803. Oh, 02, excuse me. We can change that on that slide. So what is the purpose of the TSP? So the transportation system plan is basically, no pun intended, but it's a roadmap of the long-term vision of Sherwood's transportation system, and includes strategies and improvements for projects for all modes of travel, including cars, ped, bike, and transit. So our TSP has to be consistent with local, regional, and state plans. So, hold on one second. for holding you up. It's frozen. It froze the computer, I think.
I'm sure in final editing this will look really good.
Oh,
Go down to this one. I didn't mean for that to happen. I just like. Yep, perfect. And then, great. Okay.
Not changing on the screen.
Yeah.
It doesn't like you, Erica.
I know, it really doesn't this evening. Hold on, let's like, just go back here and start from the beginning.
it's the, yeah. What if you save it from the USB to the
That's
computer?
what I'm gonna do right now.
Yeah, it's buffering.
There we go. Let's close out of here. Okay, we are. Hit slideshow right here.
Let's just open the one that we want. Can we?
Yeah.
Pick one of these?
Definitely.
Because I think the other ones are freezing right now.
Had too many PowerPoints on our computer this evening.
I think you may blame the chair for having switched the order of operation and then.
So we have required findings for plan amendments in our code. We have the Sherwood Zoning Community Development Code review criteria in Chapter 1680.03 for text amendments and map amendments, and then consistency with the transportation planning rule. And
We can still see you.
Yeah, we're good.
okay, you're good?
Oh, there you go.
I'm just going to leave it on this slide and just go through the required findings. The proposed amendments also have to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan policies and consistent with the statewide planning goals. And so text and map amendments need to be consistent with the comp plan policies and the transportation plan and the transportation planning rule, which we have found in the staff report that the proposed amendments do comply. And first, the proposed amendments are actually twofold in nature. First, they provide consistency within the city's transportation plan document. Currently, there are maps, or slash figures, as they're called in the plan, that are not consistent with one another and should be. And figure 17, which is actually up on the screen behind you, this figure was adopted in 2014 when the transportation plan was when it was updated and adopted. And this figure shows the Brookman Road. It's as an arterial, classified as an arterial. And there are two other maps and figures in the plan which are not consistent with this map, and I'll go over those figures here in just a couple moments. So secondly, the proposed amendments will provide consistency with Washington County's transportation plan, which also identifies Brookman Road as an arterial. So the proposed amendments will ensure that the TSP is consistent within the document itself and also with Washington County's TSP. So this is figure 1 in the existing TSP, and it shows that it shows Brookman Road classified as a collector. So once again, we want to make it consistent with that first figure, 17. And the proposed amendment is to show Brookman all the way through as an arterial. So moving on to figure 11 in the existing TSP, you have that portion, that little S-curve right at the corner, right at 99 down to Brookman. It's classified as an arterial, but the rest of Brookman to, I believe, is that Lad Hill Road, thank you, is classified as a collector. And so the proposed amendment shows it consistent all the way through as an arterial. So we are proposing some text changes to 2 project tables in the transportation plan document. And what this does is we are just removing, in the title of the project, we're just removing the words 3-lane collector from the title. But note that the project details for the road, for the build out of the road, does not change. Just the title of the road project itself. So this is a new proposed figure. It's figure 17B. We actually had the same map in the prior TSP, but it was not included in the TSP adoption in 2014. Engineering would like to have this map back in to the TSP document, and really this map, what it depicts is streets where right-of-way is planned for more than 2 lanes. So it's just that, it's just showing where the right-of-way is will be more than 2 lanes within the city.
So its only purpose is to identify.
Correct. It's just a map that identifies where the right-of-way is planned for more than 2 lanes.
The orange dots are those access spacing standards for that particular road designation. That orange dot has a 500-foot designation on that dot from Old Highway 99 to Brookman. Is that the access spacing standards on our street, on our arterial streets? Or you can finish your presentation and let Bob answer it when it's the end. But
do you want to? Okay.
We'll go ahead and speak.
Okay.
Generally, the dots indicate major intersection points with collector streets or major streets that we have to work with. So yes, it is spacing standards. It shows how these streets are coming into the major arterials on down, collector streets on down.
So would every street connection on Brookman Road then have a 500-foot access spacing
Not
standard?
every one. It would show that there is it would identify where the major connectors are and how those are set up. It doesn't identify all the local connections to Brookman.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And then once again, we need to be consistent within the development code itself. And so we have proposed a text change in section 16.106.110 in the Transportation Facilities chapter to match the correct figure number. We had figure 15, it should be figure 17. With that, staff recommends that Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the proposed TSP amendments to City Council for the March 6th hearing date.
All right. Are there any questions of staff before we call for testimony? And we should acknowledge that we have, I don't know what exhibit it is, presented already, the letter.
Oh, yes. So we did receive one comment, which was passed out from Mike Robinson.
Exhibit B. I'm just trying to figure out which exhibit it's going to be.
Would that be Exhibit
Oh,
D
it would
then?
be exhibit, yeah, it would be a new exhibit.
Exhibit D. This is Exhibit D. Okay, so we received Exhibit D. All right. All right, I have two people to testify this evening. First is Michael Robinson. Not yet. Yep, there you go.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair Simpson, members of the commission. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm a land use attorney. My mailing address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland 97204. I'm here on behalf of Holt Homes. I've submitted the letter that you just discussed a moment ago, dated today. My client agrees with the recommendation made to you by the staff, and we ask that after tonight's hearings concluded that you recommend approval of the TSP amendments to your city council. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I have a question. So one of the things that's being part of the Brookman Road concept plan, my recollection from the previous conversations was the preservation of the collector status so that access spacing on that road would not be hindered, and the ability to, you know, if we change it to an arterial and the Washington County applies their spacing standards, how does does that concern you as a person with property in that area or representing property in that area if they change the spacing standards from collector status to arterial status?
Thank you, Chair Simpson. Feel free to correct me. My understanding was that this was an arterial designation. The issue was the cross-section and whether, pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Washington County, whether the TSP, as I understand it, that IGA requires the city's TSP to match the county's TSP. And so we've always operated under the assumption that whatever standards applied to that, we would meet the spacing standards and we'd build out our half section when we propose a development to the city consistent with that arterial cross section. Okay. The Figure 11 amendment, which is really what we're following, implements the county TSP cross section for that arterial road designation. And as you probably recall, at the end of the annexation, was it last year or year before? It's been a while, thank you. Washington County appealed the city's approval, not over anything really having to do with the annexation per se, but having to do with the fact that the TSP wasn't consistent with the county's TSP, which is required to be consistent by the IGA. Very convoluted, but my sense is it's an obligation the city's already entered into with the county. And with respect to your particular question, whatever the access spacing standard is, we'll comply with it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you
for your time, and thank you for taking this matter out of order. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. And Melvin Taylor.
Possible to get the map up there? Yeah, Melvin Taylor. I live on the east end of Brookman in the north-south section between the two 90-degree corners. And I think I know the reason for the redesignation. But I think it's not a trivial thing for those of us living there to have it change from a collector to an arterial. I think especially on the east end, and the route that's shown doesn't really, it's obviously not going to be built on that route. You don't build a arterial with 90-degree corners in it, I don't think, and you don't run it through a neighborhood. There's some 1-acre lots on the north end, and if you took the right-of-way and then added another 60 feet or so for a side street to run the driveways into, you just, you don't, there's not that much right-of-way if they went from patio to porch, from one side to the other. So I guess that leaves us wondering where and it's a potentially a Tualatin Sherwood Road or a sunset, and it's going into a stop sign. So, just obviously it's not going to be built on that route. And I guess we're kind of wondering, like, okay, what's the plan? And there's a lot of jurisdictions involved too. Some of us are in Clackamas County. We're wondering how Washington County is going to, what Washington County can do to us in Clackamas County. As far as, the road is totally in Washington County, and it's their road, but it's how we get to town. That's where our driveway goes. I'm getting ready to build a fence on my property line on Brookman Road. It's like, how long is that fence going to be there? I think for a long time, but we're just, it seems like there's a lot of work to be done on the east end, and it's going to impact us, I think. And so we're just wondering, the whole process is a concern. Metro doesn't even have jurisdiction over the south 90-degree turn, I don't think. And Clackamas County is a piece of it, Washington County. That makes it hard for Sherwood, I think. You have, I don't think you've got the 90-degree turn on the south side too. It seems like any road alignment would have to take that corner out to make sense. And then there's that southern arterial thing that's been out there forever and ever and ever. And in fact, that's the reason for the realignment on the 99 end, I think, is to make room for the southern arterial to intersect 99 and keep the spacing on 99. So I guess as we're watching, we're looking, we're concerned, and I guess the jurisdiction thing is a question for us too. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to testify tonight on this matter? All right, then I will close the public hearing and ask for staff to provide rebuttal for or information or answers regarding the collector arterial change and jurisdiction and how that, I guess is just curious. Is it all within Washington County? Is it all within our jurisdiction? And if not, what do we?
Well, let's start off at the west end and work our way east, okay?
Okay.
So the realignment of Brookman Road up to Highway 99 is required because the intersection of the roadway would not meet spacing standards between the railroad. So to cross the railroad with any future road, arterial or whatever, 3 or 5 lane, we have to have a realignment to meet some of the ODOT, the rail standards for spacing and distance and things like that. Right now, the railroad crossing is at an angle. It's an acute angle. There's also a gas line and a gas pumping station, which further limits the roadway for any type of improvements. The intersection has some real grade issues. There's been accidents there. So the reason it's being realigned is in part, a fairly major part, is for safety concerns and for meeting the requirements of being able to do a road improvement across railroad right-of-way. So that's the realignment part. The issue about who has jurisdiction over Brookman proper is Washington County. They own that right-of-way. Our TSPs do have to match. I think future discussions about whether it's a 3-lane, a 5-lane, spacing standards is going to come with regional discussion about the regional transportation needs. And I know that we've had discussions about it, but those are ongoing, and it's quite a process. But the county is reserving the area needed for the 5-lane. I hope that we don't go beyond the 3-lane for that area, but they are reserving a 5-lane or requiring it, and that's what we have to put in.
And if I can speak to the jurisdiction, the county question, actually the Washington County, most of the Brookman area is Washington County until you get to the S-curve, and that portion essentially east of the S-curve is actually Clackamas County, but I believe that Brookman Road is all still Washington County jurisdiction, and that the county line is where Brookman Road is.
So this purple area to the east of the S Road on Brookman is within our Brookman concept plan, but it's in Washington County or Clackamas County?
That's correct.
So we've planned area in Clackamas County. All right.
And annexes, it's going to drive our city recorder crazy because there'll be about 10 lots that will have to go to elections in Clackamas County. But that's not unheard of. Wilsonville is primarily in Clackamas County and has a little bit of Washington County. It's not uncommon for jurisdictions to cross county lines.
Okay, just.
It's not ideal, but.
Yes.
And the S-curve, you're correct. I don't think the idea that you would have a reserve for 5 lanes for Lad Hill Road going through the S-curve. Brookman Road, actually, it's that section of Brookman Road that comes off Lad Hill Road makes that S-curve. It wouldn't. We aren't going to bring a 5-lane down into town. That makes no sense. It's basically so that they have a reserve right for future extension expansion of a regional roadway system potentially. But again, that's not set in stone. The southern arterial or the southern bypass route could be located there, or it could be located further south. How they get across the highway, what's it going to look like? Those are all still subject matters that are open to discussion, and we're touching onto it just because of the Brookman annexation area and the Sherwood West coming into play. It's pushing that to more of a critical nature in the discussion, but really we've just barely touched the surface of it with everybody.
And for this application, I guess in a nutshell, it's a county road. The county says it's an arterial. The county's planning on it to be 5 lanes. They've told us they want us to make our TSP figures consistent. And so that's what's in front of you tonight is the proposal to make our TSP, all of our TSP figures consistent. We have some that are the way that the county wants it and some that aren't. And so we're moving forward with that. And I was actually going to comment on Chair Simpson's question to Mr. Robinson about the spacing. And again, it's a county road, it's a county facility, so they're going to require whatever they're going to require for access spacing, regardless of what our TSP says. And that's another reason why I think that, as a representative for a developer, they're interested in making sure it's consistent so there isn't any conflict, I guess, when they come in for an application between what Washington County says and what we say needs to happen.
So, to clarify, if I'm understanding this correctly, we aren't necessarily, this action isn't changing the designation of the road to an arterial. It's already been changed by Washington County, and we're just aligning our TSP to match Washington County's TSP
Right, and I would argue our TSP already has designated as an arterial.
Yep.
We're just aligning all of our TSP to be consistent.
It was classified as an arterial in 2014 when the TSP was adopted.
So this is housekeeping.
Basically housekeeping, yes.
And-
Although we are updating it to match lane count over that area of Washington County. We had it listed as a 3-lane arterial. They had it listed as a 5-lane arterial. Now we're making it a 5-lane arterial.
But that's not what the staff said at the beginning of the report. They said that they were not changing the project list.
Right, so the project list the project list states that the road build out will be at 3 lanes with the reservation of 5 lanes for future build out if needed.
So when a developer comes in on Brookman Road in 6 months, they will be required to build 3 lanes. They will be required to dedicate right-of-way for 5 lanes.
So this protects us from having to demolish a bunch of structures later if they need to add extra lanes.
Does the county have any intent to straighten the S-curve, or will that just stay?
That the alignment of the road relative to development is still in discussion. The S-curve would not be part of the county's, if I was looking at it from a county standpoint, and this was going to be the southern bypass route, that S-curve would be something that the city would have to deal with. It's our road at that point, basically. They would just make a connection. How this is going to pan out in the future, I don't know. We would have to look at it. It could be that we redo this entire area such that that S-curve remains, but only as a local road. Who knows?
And actually in the Brookman concept plan, that's exactly what was envisioned, is that the curve would even out a little bit, be connecting to Loud Hill further to the south, and that what's existing there as Brookman in the S-curves would be a local street. And that would be if I were to wager a guess, that would be what I would expect to have happen. But the TSP, we're not putting lines in relocated roads before we start having some development concepts.
These are high-level plans. You know, when you start, it's flat plane, 100,000 foot level. When you start taking into account topography, speed, development, it will change. So this is just an idea, a concept of how we relatively want to treat our roadway system, what the functionality would be, generally speaking, what we could expect the road to be used for.
So, and I've had the conversation with Julia and with Erica because I was part of the original Brookman Concept Plan Committee. And when this was first brought to us, I felt that public notice wasn't done adequately. And I see that in this document, in the staff report, it does not provide any further information that any other citizens were contacted. I'm assuming someone was contacted because we've got a citizen from Brookman Road here.
So we did send out.
So your staff report's incomplete when it says who received notice, because there's no public notice only lists that it was noted in the Tiger Times and posted in the 5 places. My concern with this, and I wasn't here when the TSP was adopted in 2014, so I don't know what changed from the original Brookman Road concept plan to the TSP being adopted, which was to go into compliance with Washington County, I'm sure. And my concern, and what I've tried to champion to whom would listen, is that the original concept plan for Brookman Road had a lot of density situated right next to where Old Highway 99 connects to Brookman. During the planning process, during the charrettes, during all the planning that we did with that, the expectation was that there would be easy access from high-density apartments clustered right next to Old Highway 99, that they would have access, very easy access onto Brookman Road and onto Highway 99. And my concern has been that if they change, and that's why my question about limited access on this road, if it becomes large arterial access spacing and we don't have the roads to get in there, we put a lot of high density in a place that may push people to go up Timberland access on Sunset. And while this is a requirement of Washington County to make our TSP comply with their TSP, I believe it's the duty of the city council and our citizens to have an opportunity to revisit the Brookman concept plan as it relates to the density location. Because if your density and your plan was based on Brookman Road being a collector, which it was when the Brookman concept plan was done, and that accesses were given at certain points, it may not change it, but if we're changing, what happened in 2014 seemed to change the flavor of the road from a collector of 3 streets with people being able to get to it to a potential 5-lane arterial with limited access. And I've been told that there's no money for the city to revisit looking at how the density of Brookman Road is laid out. And this is my opportunity to get it on the public record that I don't believe that, even though this is a compliance with Washington County TSP, that we need to let the citizens that were part of the Brookman Road concept plan and people in the city revisit whether or not what we did here was right, because what we did based on certain road designs, and if we're going to change the road design and put density and then push everybody up to Sunset, with a high school going right in there, I think we're going to set ourselves up for failure. So we're not going to change what's going to happen tonight, but all the super high density and apartments are up here, and if we can't access except here, and you're going to put all the apartments to come someplace down over here, they're just going to go up to Sunset. Maybe, maybe not.
Okay.
And
Why would they not? Because Old Highway 99 will still connect with Brookman, correct?
Hopefully, yes.
And I do want to say that the city is taking time right now and looking for those opportunities for funding for future refinements for the Brookman concept plan.
So I just think
For the record.
It's important for people to hear that it may be the right plan, but when we changed the designation of the road, we should have made sure that the concept plan still was going to work. Because I don't remember where all the apartments were going to be, but if we're not going to allow apartments to get any, if you can't get an apartment onto Highway 99, except it's going to be easier to go north, you're going to have a lot of cut through to the traffic to the north.
Yeah, and we've actually talked with Washington County and ODOT about not just that intersection, but what might happen on the other side, especially with Sherwood West. And we are exploring several different opportunities to kind of look at that. Really, the westernmost portion of Brookman, the easternmost is a little bit more stable, except for the S-curve part. But but that doesn't change drastically in terms of what you assumed for zoning. But we definitely understand what you're talking about with the realignment. But there's just, it's been how many years since we did the Brookman concept plan? 10. So things change, and so it's probably time to look at things anyways, especially from a transportation standpoint, because ODOT has changed kind of what they're thinking about certain things, and we just know more now than we did then.
Right, and as we go through the comprehensive plan update, my one suggestion would maybe make this a focus area so that it gets special attention through the comprehensive plan update, that people understand that the zoning and the designations and the access points on Brookman Road were based on statements that were made at that time that this would be a neighborhood collector. And when this is no longer a neighborhood collector with limited access arterial spacing standards all the way along the length of it, you've changed the nature of the road. So anyway, I don't think I could change what Washington County is going to require of us, and I think that when it was done in 2014, there was a step missed because they obviously didn't tie all the maps together, but I think they missed a bigger step, which was to communicate with the Brookman concept plan document to make sure that what was zoned was going to be compatible with the area. So that's on the record. Also in the staff report, it goes ABG. so there's no C through F. I think we need to update H that staff mailed something to all the property owners on the Brookman Road
Yes, that would be okay.
before it goes to. Those are the only changes I had. And thank you for allowing me to get on my soapbox, because I think that it was a big charrette whole process. The first time I got to use the word, and I get to use it again, process where we got a lot of citizens involved over a long period of time to make sure that we came up with a planning area that would be what we felt workable at the time and may not be now. It's 10 years later and lots of things have changed, but we need to. I have nothing intelligent left to say, so if there's anything else that needs to be, any other questions, concerns? All right.
Thank you. I got that down. Oh, really? Okay. PA 1802? Oh, okay, it's not even there. Thank you. All right. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council on March 6th for P18-02 Sherwood Transportation System Plan and Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code amendments based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the City of Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for PA 1802 Transportation System Plan and something else. And Sherwood Zoning and Development Code Regulations Amendments. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that's a de novo hearing also, so citizens on March 6th will have an opportunity to testify at that time also. All right, so now we are moving to agenda item B, which is PA 1801 Housing Needs Analysis Adoption and Text Amendment to the Comprehensive Plan. And Carrie, you stayed the whole meeting.
All right. And we are up. All right. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. This is Carrie Brannicky, Senior Planner, Community Development. Today we're here to discuss the Housing Needs Analysis
We have ours, and there's no audience, so
okay.
Keep it.
You can see it on yours?
Yes, we still have it.
You guys are fine.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sean.
So
you do?
This is PA. You got enough?
Oh, there we go. Magic.
Okay, this is PA 1801. What we're doing is processing an adoption of the housing needs analysis for the 2018-2038 time period and amending the comprehensive plan text to include the housing needs analysis. So I'm not sure where the Planning Commissioner's familiarity with housing needs analysis within the Portland Metro is, or the audience is, for that matter. So I'm going to go over some basics. The first, if you want to advance to your next slide. There we go. So what is a housing needs analysis? Basically, it's required of us. Statewide Planning Goal 10 requires all incorporated cities to complete an inventory of our buildable residential lands and to encourage the availability of adequate numbers of housing units in price and rent ranges that commiserate with the financial capabilities of its households. That's the goal, the ideal. There's lots of things we have to do to get there. So the housing needs analysis will first describe the housing market historically and recently, and just trends overall, nationally, locally, regionally, all of it's covered. It describes our current and future demographic characteristics in Sherwood. Mainly it forecasts future housing need based on those considerations and with the Metro 2016 Urban Growth Report forecasted rate. So you take how many people are coming, what kind of housing they're going to need based on their demographics, based on trends, and it pops out a number on the other end. And then we also provide a buildable lands inventory that addresses the residential land sufficiency inside our urban growth boundary to meet the needs for the 20-year planning horizon. So that's what it does. Why do we need it? It's part of Goal 10, lots of state statutes. We also have the Metropolitan Housing Rule and the Metro Functional Growth Management Plan. So state and region, lots of requirements. Overall, when you take it together, there aren't that many. We need to provide enough land to accommodate our forecasting housing needs for the next 20 years. We need to designate land that provides an opportunity for 50% of new housing to be developed as multifamily or single family attached. And we need to achieve the average density of 6 dwelling units per acre. This housing needs analysis was initially developed as part of the Sherwood West Preliminary Concept Plan in 2015. It covered the time period 2015 to 2035, and it informed the Sherwood West planning. It was not adopted by council or processed as an amendment to the comprehensive plan at that time. It just was used to inform the Sherwood West concept plan. So why are we adopting an H&A before the comprehensive plan update? In your ideal world, you'd do housing needs analysis, and then you'd say, well, what are we going to do with this data? What changes are we going to make? How are we going to basically implement the data we receive? In this case, for the purposes of submitting a proposal to Metro for the urban growth management decision, that's their decision whether or not to expand the urban growth boundary, the city had to update the H&A to reflect the current time period, 2018 to 2038. And we are required to have an adopted and acknowledged housing needs analysis within the last 5 years as a requirement to submit our proposal to them. So we need to do this at this time for this urban growth management decision that's going forward.
That's the Sherwood West expansion.
Then expansion to Sherwood West. So it's important to note that the proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan for the inclusion of the housing needs analysis contains no updates to the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. It contains no updates to the zoning map, and it contains no updates to our development code. It is for background data and information purposes only, and it will prepare for our update to the comprehensive plan.
Well, the numbers in here drive how we change our zoning, though.
And our goals and policies.
Right, so that's what it, if we accept these numbers as fact, then it says we will potentially change our density standards within the community or lot sizes or something. May.
It's information that will inform the goals and policies of what will move forward. So I'll go over briefly what it concludes. Basically, Sherwood population has grown relatively fast. We have had an 8% annual growth rate between 1990 and 2013. Sherwood's population is aging. Right now, people over 45 is the fastest growing group. Sherwood is attractive to younger people and households with children. 47% of households have children, and pretty soon millennials will be the fastest growing group in Sherwood for 20 years forward. And then Sherwood's population is slowly becoming more ethnically diverse. So if these trends continue, it will result in changes of types of housing demanded or needed in Sherwood. The aging population will likely result in increased demand for smaller single-family homes, multifamily housing, and specialty housing for seniors. And the growth of younger, diversified household is likely to result in an increased demand for a wider variety of more affordable housing for families with children on moderate incomes. And those will also be smaller single-family homes, townhomes, and duplexes. Something else to take into consideration is changes in commuting patterns could affect the future growth of Sherwood, as traffic could significantly increase regionally. People may choose not to live far away from transit and jobs, or telecommuting could pick up, and it may be a whole lot easier for people to move out to Sherwood and commute to jobs remotely. The other thing is Sherwood households right now have a relatively high income, which is affecting the types of houses that are affordable. And there's a graphic of that missing middle housing I was speaking about that they're projecting will be needed in Sherwood. So how much housing growth is forecasted and how much of that growth can be accommodated in Sherwood? So we have a forecasted growth of adding 1,653 new households between 2018 and 2038. Of these, 697 are inside city limits and 956 are in the Brookman area. So the Sherwood planning area, which is the city limits and Brookman, is about 70% of our projected growth. So the note here is Sherwood has a deficit of land for housing. This is important for our Goal 10 findings. The deficit of land is 497 units, and the largest deficits are in medium density and high density residential. And the other thing to note is the city will need to continue to annex Brookman in order to accommodate our projected growth. If Planning Commission's into numbers, here are the tables that basically describe what I just described. As you can see, the areal deficits are in the medium density, low, medium density, high, and high density residential. The other big question out there is, what if Sherwood's grows faster than the Metro projections? The Metro projected about 0.8% annual growth rate over the next 20 years. Sherwood has a historical growth rate of about 8%. At the faster rate, Sherwood's land base has a capacity for 4 to 10 years of growth. And with that, additional housing growth will really depend on availability of development-ready land, and that's in the Brookman area, which is, there's a large center in the middle of it where I had large property owners that got together and could make a development. The areas on either side are highly parcelized, and it might be more difficult to develop. So what are the impacts for the UGB? Sherwood will need Sherwood West to accommodate the future growth beyond the Brookman area. So Sherwood is not meeting its Goal 10 obligation of having a 20-year land supply. And the implication for the housing policies as we move forward with the comprehensive plan, as I sort of went over, we have a limited supply of modern, high-density land available for that kind of housing. And so this is for young families, for seniors, for the millennials, and we also have an ongoing need of providing affordable housing for lower income households, which will also be those smaller missing middle housing types. So all this needs to be kept in mind as we move forward with the comprehensive plan update. So as Erica kind of went over with the TSP, same thing kind of applies with the text amendment to the comprehensive plan. We have a section in our code that has a criteria of what needs to be met. Briefly, our last H&A was done in 1990, so it's overdue slightly. 20 years. It's been 25 years since our last H&A, or 28 years, okay. And then we need to update this housing needs analysis and process the text amendment in order to have a complete application to Metro for the urban growth management decision. And we need to have that application because we do not meet Goal 10. We don't have enough land in our urban growth boundary. City Council in December supported the letter of interest sent to Metro as a first step towards our UGB expansion. And you can look in your findings, but Sherwood's housing needs analysis is consistent with the requirements of state statutes, statewide planning goal 10, and the metropolitan housing rule. And all the information will be used to make us more consistent and enhance Sherwood's compliance with this as we move forward with the comprehensive plan update. But long story short, our current comprehensive plan and zoning code does meet the requirements. Doesn't meet them with a lot of bells and whistles, but we do meet the bare minimum. We received one written comment in support of the PA 1801. It was in support. I think Kirsten has them available prior to the public hearing. And overall, staff recommends the Planning Commission for the approval of the recommendation to Council of the housing needs analysis and the plan amendment to the City of Sherwood Comprehensive Plan, Part 2, to include the housing needs analysis 2018-2035 as Exhibit A.
And if I can just add, Carrie mentioned that this is really the first part of what we need to fully do our comprehensive plan update for the housing needs analysis. And that is actually funded through our technical assistance grant that we received from the state. So we'll be doing our economic opportunities analysis, which will be both the background stuff and the policy stuff, but then we'll also be doing the policy component of our housing needs analysis through that grant as well. So this is really kind of just getting this piece out of the way as we move forward into that grant-funded project.
That concludes my presentation. I'm willing to take any questions, concerns, comments, changes.
So is the housing needs analysis the official Eco Northwest Exhibit A and then Diane Matthews' letter Exhibit B?
Actually,
or is this exhibit?
The Exhibit B is actually there should be a page in there. It is it amends the table of contents of the comprehensive plan to, we're basically creating, we're creating a part of the comprehensive plan because we don't have basically appendices or exhibits in our current comprehensive plan because it's so old. So we're creating an Exhibit A to our comprehensive plan for the housing needs analysis. And that's what Exhibit B will be. Exhibit C will be the comment.
So this is Exhibit C.
Do we have to allow millennials into Sherwood?
They're coming.
Yes.
Were you born before 1980?
I was.
Okay.
December 1979. My wife would always refer to herself as a millennial. She was born in 1982, and one time I joked with her saying that she was the oldest millennial ever. So she laughed at it. But.
Yes. Do we have any questions of Carrie? Because I have some typos and other questions to go through. On the staff report, page 1 of 14, you have a B, but it's blank. A is the applicant.
Oh, the B, yeah.
Yep. And then on page, it's page 72, which is 10 of 14, the top paragraph. To provide adequate land supply, Sherwood will need to continue to annex the Brookman area with is primary. It just needs to be probably a sentence. I mean,
to make some sense.
Sorry, which is.
Yeah.
Which is. And then page 144, which is 42 of the Eco Northwest thing.
Right.
In their margin little text box, the very bottom one says, providing opportunities for housing in these densities may provide opportunities for.
Probably should be an and provide opportunities.
I don't know what they intended. It was just an adder sentence. So in the analysis itself on page 130 of our staff report, which is 28 of the Eco Northwest, it uses Portland's median family housing. Is that number what they use to base affordable housing? And if so, why wouldn't they use Sherwood's median family income instead of Portland's?
I'm looking at that. I think it's the Portland region. It's not the city of Portland, so I think that's sort of looking.
Right, but why would they use Portland's regional median family income? I mean, are they using that median family income for basing affordable housing in Sherwood when Sherwood's?
Well, what they're looking at,
I mean,
to meet the metropolitan housing rule, they have to look regionally, yes.
but we're applying the regional affordable standard to the city of Sherwood when we define what our affordable housing is, instead of what our current median income is within the city of Sherwood.
Yes. I think that it is. I think there are certain formulas on what you consider median income, and it's not.
It's
like
not
us,
the median income
right,
of our community, it's the median income of the Portland
of the
metro
region,
area.
Right. That's and we can certainly verify that and confirm.
That's true, because we're looking at the metropolitan rule, so you're gonna look at the median income, as the region as a whole.
Because
That's gonna be our input.
So we're redefining Sherwood's definition by
Just-
applying
just
metros.
Yes, just for this housing needs, component of the analysis.
Right, but we're also using those same metro numbers to define our community by telling us how many mixed multifamily we have. We're using, so instead of being Sherwood specific, we're being homogeneous to the metro area so that we can be one defined area.
Yeah, for compliance with the metropolitan housing rule.
We have to be
Do we have to
homogeneous.
comply with the metro?
That's what I'm
housing
really
rule?
wondering is what are the consequences of us not approving this? We say again?
They won't add Sherwood West.
I mean, is that,
I mean, it's not
that's
really an
true,
option.
right? If this doesn't go in, then we can't submit for the.
That is true, but I also, and I frankly am just not that familiar with it, but I think that the state has certain requirements that you have to meet when you're doing housing needs analysis and when you're complying with things, and you can't just look at what your community, I mean, you're just like our economic opportunities analysis, you look at sort of where you are regionally. It doesn't mean that your goals and policies necessarily have to be the same as everybody else in the community or in the region, but
that's not true. Our goal has to be 50% of opportunity for
opportunity.
And I understand the difference, but I'm just saying.
But I think, and Carrie, you've done a lot of more research on this than I have. I think that our code currently provides that opportunity.
It does provide that opportunity, but I just want the commission so that when I run off to Cabo, understanding that metros and our inclusion within metro and their dictates and mandates are continually requiring us to come into compliance with the same standard they set for Gresham
And Beaverton.
and Beaverton.
Like
and,
Oswego and West Lynn and
right.
Forest Grove, yeah.
Yeah, I don't particularly have a problem adopting this data because we have to do it and whatever, but my bigger concern is Metro's one size fits all approach to everyone in Metro, and this is not the right forum for that, but it's a huge concern of mine, and I believe probably a lot of other people in Sherwood.
But I feel like there's a lot of concerning information or numbers that are in this, and for myself personally, I'm concerned about the implications of that and potentially what that means to us when we go into planning for zoning, what goes where, among many other things about it, and there's a lot more that alarms me about it than.
Yeah, and
keeping quiet.
I think
I don't want
if
to be here till midnight.
yeah, I just think, we have to, and technically, we probably just have to adopt it and pass it forward, but if we keep in mind that all the numbers that we're using to base our assumptions as we go forward for our affordability, our housing densities, are based on what Metro is mandating to us, if we just keep that in mind as we make decisions going forward and understanding the consequences of those acceptance of those numbers and what we have been in compliance with Metro because our code is, like you said, it's in compliance with no bells and whistles, but the further we deviate from what our core values are, and we need to re-emphasize our core values by going back to our community, we need to keep, who is our audience? Is our audience Metro or is our audience our citizens? And we need to make sure we reach out to our citizens to know what they want.
I mean, a lot of what this is advocating for is very different than what I understand Sherwood to be, and it just feels very heavy-handed, and again, I'm just concerned about how that impacts what future decisions we make if we're accepting this and planning based off of it.
I don't think Metro cares what our citizens want, personally. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that can be said for any regional agency. So,
A question. I don't remember the name of the meeting, but we recently had it at Laurel Ridge. It's about Sherwood West and which parcels we wanted to take to Metro. So in that meeting, was that done off of the old housing needs analysis? Is that why the numbers are so different?
Yes, this housing needs analysis wasn't complete at that time.
Yeah, they
It was drafted, yeah.
Metro, you guys will appreciate this. Metro changed the goalposts on us. Basically, fairly recently, they changed the requirement that said in order to have a proposal for the UGB decision that they're basically making by the end of this year, you need to have an adopted and acknowledged housing needs analysis. And so, and luckily, I mean, we are working on our comprehensive plan update, and this is something that we need to do anyways. And so we were able to sort of shift some money around and dust off what we had done with Sherwood West and update it. But the numbers that we have in this report are more fresh, I guess, than what we had at that.
And so then I think at that meeting were we kind of looking at 300? Was that what we were placing?
We were, and I can, that's.
And is that still then
the
what would be needed for?
So what we actually have indicated in our letter of interest is 626 acres. 600 acres.
60, yeah.
And how much net?
I think it's 422 around there somewhere.
Things change when
I'm just having palpitations.
I understand.
And the rationale for that was, frankly, the 300 acres was really just a number that we'd been saying, and not really based on any specific data. We were just like, 300 sounds like a good number. As we did the Sherwood West UGB expansion discussion meeting, we got a lot of feedback from property owners that wanted to be in, and we actually didn't include all the people that were interested, and there were a lot of people advocating. But really for me personally, the big issue or the big highlight was the school and the new high school, and how we're really struggling with the new school, and how do you fund the infrastructure that you need to expand the urban growth boundary for a site, a 90-acre parcel of land, and the realization that if we're going to expand the urban growth boundary in this area, you're going to be able to make things pencil, and you're going to be able to spread the cost of the infrastructure if you bring in more land versus if you just bring in these little 300-acre piecemeal areas. And so that sort of all went into the discussion with the council and their support for the area that we included in our letter of interest. We're still working on our final submittal, and we'll need to go to council and get their blessing to submit, and they'll actually have to do a resolution supporting that area. So it's not finalized yet, but that's why it went from 300 acres to more.
And how large is that whole area? I'm just trying to, are we talking about?
It's about half.
Yeah, it's about 1,200. So it's everything south of Chicken Creek. So the Chicken Creek will be the really
1,900 or
dividing line.
1,200?
It's about 12. It was about 1,200.
1291, that's right.
Yeah, 1291. We're asking for about half of it.
So I'm just to do numbers, just a statement. We are short 497 housing units
According to the Metro Scope forecast.
for 20 years. And so instead of asking for what we need for 20 years, we asked for net just over 400 acres at our average 7 units per acre. We're asking for 2,800 units to come into this community to meet a 500 unit deficit. True statement? That's the decision, right?
Well, that's not the decision that's before you this evening.
I understand, but
That's the impact.
that's the impact. This is the path we're going down. These are the things that are wondering minds want to know. You know, we're 500 units short at 7 units per acre. 70 units added to Sherwood West. We wouldn't have infrastructure to build it. And I realize it may be off topic, but shocking, you know, and I know council probably made that decision based on some facts that were brought forth by its staff, but it's.
So I'll highlight that we're 497 short based on us growing at 0.08%, which personally I think is absolutely unrealistic. And just because it's in the urban growth boundary, as you see with Brookman, doesn't mean it's going to develop anytime soon. If you don't bring that land in, then you know, right now with Brookman, if we grow at the rate that we've grown at historically, we have about 5 to 10 years worth of land. So it's kind of factoring all that in. You don't necessarily want to have a perfect balance. We have this many acres, we need this many acres, because we know things aren't really going to happen the way Metro says it's going to happen.
Do they always, I'm sorry, do they always give you what you request? They could say, well, we just want to give you 300.
That's possible.
Or nothing at all.
Or nothing. Thanks for the application.
Certainly, you know, and frankly, last time they did their big UGB expansion, the city actually had a resolution asking for portions of Sherwood West before we even did the concept plan to be brought into the urban growth boundary, and Metro did not find that there was a need because they have to find that there is a regional need for housing. They don't necessarily have to find that Sherwood needs housing or Cornelius needs housing. They have to find that there's a regional need for housing, and then however they meet that regional need, it can go all to Hillsborough,
right,
or Damascus.
So both Metro and this Eco Northwest forecast that we're going to be growing at 1% per year or less, but we don't believe that to be true.
Eco Northwest forecasted it because that's what Metro said. That's not what they necessarily, that's just, you guys can explain it better than I can.
That feels weird.
Metro says, so
So
you
Metro has a big model called Metroscope, and it's based on transportation zones and whatnot. And you throw a bunch of numbers in, they pop it out at you, and they popped out at 0.8%. A lot of that is based on we don't have a lot of land in urban growth boundary, but we know historically we've grown at 8%. We also know the impact if we don't grow, the housing becomes extremely unaffordable and you're forced to grow up instead of growing out. And so Sherwood's going to have to talk in this comprehensive plan of what their vision is. Do they want to increase density inside the urban growth boundary, or do we want to grow out? But this isn't really the discussion of the housing needs analysis. This is just data. This is all the policy. What do we want to do?
I feel like this document is driving extreme growth and dense policy, and that's in a nutshell my issue with.
But the document is just it's a forecast. It's not saying this is what
And kind of in that way, I feel like it's like self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
Well, what you ultimately do about this and how you acknowledge it or choose to look the other way or prevent it, I guess, is what you do through the policy component of the comprehensive plan. So this
Which
is just
Metro
basically.
largely dictates.
What's that?
Which Metro largely dictates.
There'll be a lot of community conversations. I mean, we certainly are not going to be able to say, we're not going to allow any poor people to live in our community.
Right.
It's just not, that's not what, we're not going to be able to say that. But we can say, we don't want to grow more than 0.08% a year, or, there's things that, that through the policy discussion, we can meter growth through annexations. We can say, we have residential design standards. We can have infill design standards. I mean, there's all sorts of things that will come out of the policy discussion that we have, but this is really just the data.
But that's kind of like accepting or acknowledging this data essentially will drive that type of growth, and that's what concerns me about it. But I don't know if there's anything that we can.
Ultimately, the market will drive growth.
But this is essentially dictating what that is, what that market inventory is, and I find that questionable, considering what and
I would have to say that it's not dictating. I mean, we had the Great Recession, where we didn't see a lot of housing development within the Portland metro area for a couple of years. And so, I mean, there's always fluctuations
But the recommendations or assumptions or the analysis that was provided to this said two things that have made Sherwood be what Sherwood is. 5,000 square foot lots and your statement, the missing middle, the 11 to 16 units per acre or whatever it was, where you have, those are things that, right, wrong, or indifferent, Sherwood is single-family detached homes, where Metro is telling us 50% opportunity for multifamily and attached.
But so all this data, though, is telling you is what we have, not, and it's projecting based on sort of demographics and regional needs, what we think we need. It's not, I guess I'm struggling with.
And so kind of by accepting or then it, to me, it then becomes hard to disagree with that or, demonstrate, have a decision contrary to that, because at one point you're like, well, you accepted this and agreed to it, and now you're fighting it, and it was more for myself.
So tell me what it is that you have objections to.
One of the concerns is regarding, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it already, but regarding the 50% requirement of multifamily or single-family attached.
And what page are you looking at for that? Because I want to understand.
Well, that was mentioned multiple times.
So he's talking about the, especially our metropolitan planning rule that we provide the opportunity for 50%.
Further into that, further concern is out of that 50%, 40% of it is recommended that it's multifamily housing, with only 10% as single family attached.
Then again, it's that opportunity. We'll probably are never going to get to that threshold. And we offer that opportunity now in Sherwood. So for multifamily housing, we can turn to commercial mixed-use areas in the what's their zoning? Retail commercial. So that allows multifamily housing, mixed-use housing. But it just provides the opportunity. It's whether or not a developer comes in and actually provides that housing is a different story.
So we currently
and the market dictates that.
So then the market's not pushing what this is recommending.
This isn't making a recommendation.
Well, it actually is on page 144, 143 and 144, conclusions and recommendations. I'm looking particularly at the bottom half of page 144. increase the medium density residential high to allow more density, increase the amount of high density residential. Again, at the third one was another increase from 11.1 to 16.7 dwelling units per acre. So those are recommendations that are in this document that I don't necessarily agree with. So it's not just data when there's recommendations built into the document.
So I guess two things. One, it's saying you evaluate, not do it. But my question to you, Carrie, is does that need to be in there? I mean, it is a recommendation from the consultant, but are there ways that we could word it to take away some of their concerns that we're actually mandating something through this? Because this is really intended to be just data.
Right,
I hear what you're saying.
It's pushing a point of view.
Yeah. And
we can eliminate the conclusions and recommendations, that section of it. I don't think it's necessary to meet our obligations for a housing needs analysis.
I think
I can double check with that.
Can I ask the question? What number was that, Doug, that we were looking at that you were referencing?
144.
It's on page 144 of the packet. It's the last. The Sherwood has relatively limited supply of land for moderate and higher density.
Okay.
I mean, this is one example. I think I haven't read through all of it again here as I'm sitting here, but I know that section definitely is pushing a very particular point of view.
Yeah, it went from factual data with historical references to a presumption of this is how we're going to increase density.
I think this section provides options in the next step of developing our goals and policies for housing within Sherwood.
Forms goals and policies.
It may, I want to say it may inform. For example, on the second paragraph, so this is the second little bullet, it says the city may choose to evaluate. So when we look at our goals and policies for housing in the future, this is just recommending certain action items that the city could do or may do. I don't necessarily think it's mandating us.
No, but it's a loaded question.
Well, but we are approving it.
I'd like to make a recommendation, given that it's 10:30, and I don't think we're going to get through this tonight. What I would recommend, and we factored in a second hearing with the Planning Commission in our time schedule. No, we didn't.
This is going to hearing at council at March 6th.
I thought we for the.
Well, our next.
Let me see if we can.
Our next meeting's the 23rd.
The 27th.
27th.
Okay. All right.
27th. Yeah, we can.
Oh, we have time.
Yeah, because it's March 3rd. That's right.
We have time.
I was 2 weeks ahead of myself.
Can I ask a procedural question along that note? So let's say we decide we want to hold this over for another session. Is there a mechanism we have for submitting to staff, like specific? I can go through here and send you pages and pages and pages of thoughts. Is there a mechanism for that that's allowable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that was part of my recommendation is let's continue this. I think what I want us to do is look through this through the eyes that you've given us tonight, probably talk with DLCD staff, talk with Metro staff, and see what level of tweaking they'd be okay with and still getting our housing needs analysis adopted and acknowledged without them having objection to it. But then also giving you the opportunity to kind of say, hey, this concerns me. I guess give it to Carrie. But you're saying that we are okay. I thought we had planned on two.
You have to look to see when what my concern is the next planning commission meeting is the 27th, and our packet for the city council December 6th meeting would be due
So we would
the
just
Friday
push out
before that.
March 6th.
March 6th.
I do have the concern about us meeting our
It has to be
our
done
PAPA.
before the end of May.
Because we have to have the PAPA, and then we have to have the 30 days before we submit our DLCD letter. So it'll work, but especially if we can do it in a kind of modified packet to council.
The other question is, and this is where I think sometimes we get presented something like this. I mean, I'll use the water master plan because that's pretty innocuous. You're presented a set of facts, and there's really a whole bunch of facts. You just accept them, you push them on, the water master plan goes through, and we have a water system. Same with sewer and storm. Transportation's a little different because you got some roads and people get touchy. But we go into the housing needs analysis. If we change this or we don't change this, what difference is it going to make? Are we going to help or hinder our community? And I think that's what, by putting in concrete these documents that say we agree with increasing density to solve a problem, we don't. I don't know.
Or are we just
right? So I want to express this document right here is not explicitly saying the city of Sherwood should increase density. That's going to be a conversation down the road.
Right, but once everything starts rolling, when do we get to stop the ball and say, wait a second, everything is based on requirements of Metro. When do we get to put in the needs of the Sherwood citizens?
And the fact that we put this document in to the comprehensive plan, then somebody comes back later and says, well, if you look at the conclusions and this thing that was adopted, and then that starts the ball rolling down the thing.
Happen. I'll also say, and maybe we need to talk a little bit more about this. I think, again, what I want to look at this and make sure that what you're adopting is really data and that it's clear that it's just data. And then as we move into the policies and goals discussion, you're being informed by the data, but you're not bound by the data. And I want to double check with Metro and DLCD. And we're doing the comp plan update. We can adopt this and then adopt something else in 6 months. We're not bound.
Let's be realistic. You spent the money on this. Are you going to redo it in 6 months?
It wasn't that much money. So
but time and resources.
Well, if this is what needs to happen in order for us to get you to a comprehensive plan update that you're comfortable with, you're not going to adopt the policy element of the comprehensive plan update if you're not comfortable with the document. And we'll need. I understand what you're saying, but we're not going to be able to move the policy discussion forward if we're not resolving that we're happy with the policy. The whole point of the comprehensive plan is a roadmap to get us where we want to go. But if we're not going where you guys want to go, well, then we need to figure something else out. What this isn't supposed to be saying, this is where you're going to go. This is saying, here's the choices. My analogies aren't very good right now, but this is what you have. Here's the numbers, here's the demographics, here's the trends, and then that will inform the next step of the process, which is, okay, what do we do? Do we, like when we did the economic opportunities analysis last time, there was a range forecast, and through the policies, they ended up saying we're going to shoot for the middle of the range.
So if it's on the record tonight that these are facts and this is data and opinions, and we recommend forward with recommendation for approval, when this comes back down the pike, can't we reference this and say, yes, it was amended into the comp plan, but it was not like we have to do this and we discussed this in great detail. It was like, here's the data, you can use it if you want. You probably will use it to some extent because we're professionals, but this isn't like binding us to anything, even though it goes in
and it's going into the current comprehensive plan.
Right, exactly.
We're going to be doing a new comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
It's
being on the record tonight. I guess. Would that satisfy people, that being on the record tonight saying that this is not stuff that we have to do? This is merely data and opinions. Is that good enough?
I would be much more comfortable
if the opinions were left out.
Well, yeah, I'd be much more comfortable with something that were purely historical data versus opinion and or projected data, because that's where it gets into a whole lot of different agendas.
So I think the conclusions are appropriate. Sherwood is able to meet state requirements is appropriate. But recommendations from staff when we haven't had citizen input to what our citizens want for recommendations going forward is two different things. And Sean, I don't know if we can take comments from you, but I'd like to hear what the council. Josh, am I violating any rules by getting the counselors? Because they're gonna. I don't want to send them something.
I was kind of agreeing with what you said right up until the end when you started saying that. I mean, this is data. This is, but it's not binding it, and it's not suggesting anything past what it says on the paper. I guess that's. I mean, I think I'm kind of agreeing with what Erica has been saying here. Is that. I'm trying to put this in the right way at 10:35 at night. I don't think you're bound by anything with this here, and I think that this is just the results of the analysis. I think it's an analysis, and I think it's a projection. I think you have to have some projection in it because it is. That's what they're projecting out for 20 years, and so I'm not sure if I'm understanding where you're feeling that you're committed to.
They are recommending increasing density opportunities, adding an additional zone that gets for dwelling units 11.1 to 16.7 that we don't have, and that is either the consultant or someone else's recommendation that we provide additional density within our community when we haven't asked our community if they want that.
I think, though, if you look at the language more closely, it says the key sentence to me is, if the city wants more multifamily housing growth in core areas of Sherwood, the city should evaluate whether to make policy changes. That's the kind of the leading sentence. And then in each of these bullet points beneath it, it's consider this. You can evaluate.
I don't think we're asking the citizens at this stage of the process.
Not mandatory. It's really just.
But it's interesting to me that all the recommendations all seem to point in one particular direction, which to me lends a potential.
I think that might just
there's
be
a
because
potential
that's
of
naturally
bias
where
there.
our deficit is.
I think that's what we need. I think that's what the region needs. It's not a surprise to me. That's what the recommendation is.
That's what
And not necessarily,
my objection.
again, that gets back to the, we may want to consider this, we may not want to consider it. I think I also am not surprised that it came back that way because I know Sherwood.
I'm not surprised by
it,
based on it being
And if you ask the citizens if they want it, they're going to say, no, we already know that.
Right.
We already know that they don't want to meet the need of middle housing, attainable housing. Because Sherwood wants to have a certain feel about it. And there's a reason why there's that missing middle, because nobody wants it.
Right.
But
we all want farms right near us. And if we want farms, we have to increase density and somehow, build up or build out. And if we build out, we lose farmland. If we build up, our citizens aren't happy because we have 5 stories in Old Town. So
I'm just curious regarding, is there any information regarding projected data regarding these, 20-year projections, and actually what the projection was and what the actual result was?
Yeah, they're.
I'm just really curious as to how accurate.
It's market driven. I wouldn't say it's very accurate at all.
About like Metro's numbers.
I'm just, because I know we're looking at these 20-year projections a lot, and previously, I haven't had much issue with it, but this again, feels very heavy-handed to me in terms of what it's trying to drive us towards.
So Metro is required every 6 years to do their urban growth report, which is essentially is running these numbers every 6 years. Last cycle, 3 years ago, their projections based on past trends and their projections showed that there was not a need to expand the urban growth boundary. That was because primarily the recession. So they committed to looking at it again in 3 years, which is what they're doing now. So Metro does it every 6 years. We should do it certainly more often than every 28 years. And so we should be in a cycle of every 10 years maximum updating our numbers, making sure that our comprehensive plan is still in line with where we want to be going and checking in. The problem is we haven't done that in so long. If we'd been doing that for the past 30 years, I don't think these numbers would be anything drastic at all, because we just haven't kept up with the trends.
So to move this document forward, would refining the conclusions and recommendations beginning statement with a disclaimer that says this is the following conclusions and recommendations are merely expert opinion based on something other than the citizen input of the citizens of Sherwood. So that
it's verbatim.
I'm just saying, because I get that you guys have an obligation, you have a timeline that's got to us today with, wow, if we try and continue it, we're not going to have any opportunity for council to hear it. You've got some sort of deadline. It's, I feel like I'm, I don't want to discount what we're doing because I think I have concern, but I also feel like, it's going to come through at some level, and I don't know what other. I'm just kind of flailing to say. I know it's going to have to be, and I may be resolved to. It's going to have to be approved at some level.
I'm not comfortable with what it is.
Okay, and so Justin's not comfortable with what it is. I don't think Scott is either. Do you have?
So if we don't recommend it to City Council, they still could push it through, right?
Well, yeah, right.
I mean, it's like.
So we can.
But that's on them.
Yeah.
But
we could even.
We can wordsmith something together that is a recommendation we feel more comfortable with. And that's the only thing that we're left with, is that if we continue it to the next hearing, I want to know that, or the commission to understand that if we have things that we want to change, we need to get that language to staff so that they can craft language that can be presented to the commission that we can vote on next meeting. Are you comfortable with the language that's in here?
I have some mixed emotions.
Kara?
Yes, it's very mixed again.
So can I ask a question? Are you concerned with the data as it's presented, with the showing the 11.8% projection for the alternate housing or whatever, or is it the recommendation strictly that you're at issue with? Because if you remove the recommendation towards the end, is there still going to be an issue from a few of the commissioners about the projection and the analysis and the data contained within? Is there value in rewriting or removing that recommendation and bringing it back, or will this discussion continue in 2 weeks?
So I'll answer for me. So I still have questions and concerns about what Chair Simpson brought up about using the Portland regional statistics for income, average income, or whatever it was, median income,
family income.
As opposed to using Sherwood's specifically. And I'm a little unclear on. I heard what you guys said, but it didn't really satisfy me on that point. So maybe that's something we can get offline.
The analysis itself, you've got an issue.
And then I'm not. I think I would push the rest of my objectives or concerns to a future time as we're updating the comprehensive plan and looking at future development in Sherwood. I definitely don't necessarily agree with the way that this document was prepared, but I also, in reading more carefully the lead up in that section, I addressed it. It's clear to me that it is just one thing the city could look at. I wish it wasn't necessarily in there at all, but I could live with it being in there.
I'm comfortable with the document as written. maybe in 5 years, no, 4 years when I'm still on the commission, I will be like, that was a mistake. But as it stands right now, I'm comfortable with it, given that it is, it's data that's being provided to us and it's recommendations. It's not something that we have to act on, and to my understanding, that will be forced to act on at any point in time. So I feel comfortable with taking this document as it is. I would also be open to removing the recommendations, but I don't necessarily think they have to be removed.
My issue with it is I feel like it was done with a desired result, and the document was created to drive to meet that recommendation.
I don't think there's any other outcome that they could have come up with. I mean, if they're operating off of the Portland regional area, right? I mean, if you think about Sherwood, we really do have a limited number of. So I think the conclusions that the data came up with, I don't think should be a surprise to any of us, because we don't have, low to middle income housing. We don't have a lot of it. So I think that I would expect that data to come out of this report, and I think I'm comforted knowing that we have the option to consider that in our future planning.
I just feel like this ties our hands, personally.
I don't think the adoption of this data ties our hands. I think Metro ties our hands. It's not the same thing, but that's for a future debate.
Chris, any moving forward with it, or?
I would move forward with it, with how it is.
Okay. And my concern, again, was, as I started with, is the median family income, and that we're basing our affordable housing based on Portland region rather than our own community. Mm-hmm. So, we're setting a bar that's different than what we're currently operating under.
I would agree with that. I would say if that's the only question I had, it's just how did we get to using the Portland region number rather than the Sherwood number, but I'm assuming that's something that has to be done. Is that a correct assumption?
I can look up the statute on how they prepare it, but
the housing that they say that we need, was that based off of regionals or based off of what Sherwood actually needed?
That's
Sherwood.
based on Sherwood.
Sherwood's
not
needs.
the region.
So yeah, that's
Sherwood's
kind of
needs.
like, it's like, they give us one number for regional,
But
and then
that's-
here's what you need as Sherwood.
Sherwood needs, but based on the regional income.
We need it based on the region's requirement that there be attached family and multifamily at a particular level.
Yeah, that's where.
The opportunity.
Yeah, I think we have the
have that
option.
now.
We have the option to consider because we have a deficit in that area according to the Portland region median income. Right?
Was the report, for lack of a better word, bound to use the Portland numbers and not not allowed to use the Sherwood numbers?
yeah, this report was prepared for the requirements of the metropolitan housing rule, and if you look throughout there's a whole bunch of appendixes in the back. I'm not sure if you got there.
Yep.
That kind of explains the methodology of how the numbers were prepared. And I could go back and read them and write up something for you guys that might put that methodology more in plain speak. That could help you decipher where the numbers came from.
I'm not so much questioning the methodology as, so what I think I'm hearing you say, but you didn't say it outright, was that Metro requires individual cities to use the regional definition of median family household income. Is that?
I'll have to look specifically. That's my assumption, but I'm not positive, so I would have to double check that before I give you this.
So that, to me, that's something I can't, until I have clarity on that, I'm not comfortable in forwarding this.
All right, do we have time to bring it back to the next meeting, knowing, and so everybody's had an opportunity to read the whole thing, and if we staff needs to get when is your thing due for council? Is it due on Tuesday or Wednesday morning?
Friday, a week and a half before.
The Friday before our
Yeah,
meeting.
so there won't
Friday, a
be
week and a half
time
before your
to get it. If we continue it, we won't be able to get it in the March 6th packet.
I won't be here at the next meeting, just throwing that out there in case anybody else won't be.
So it would go March 20th and then April 3rd to council because they have 2 readings, which is tight but doable. But it's up to you.
I'm hearing enough concern from the commission to address the median family income to make sure that the report, if it's required that we use Metro's number, then we just understand that we have to use Metro's number. Is there, if we have to use Metro's number, can we also incorporate Sherwood's number into it so that we can have a comparison? What's our Sherwood median household when we're trying to compare affordable housing? Because that was in the appendices. And then conclusions and recommendations, maybe remove things that are not factual conclusions you guys had probably things that you would be able to give to staff before the next meeting or at least recommend edits that you want removed.
And certainly if there's questions like the median household income, if you're like, why was this used? That would be really helpful so that we can make sure that we resolve all the questions at the
But if we're using this as our factual document, we have a median household income for Metro, but we also have one for the city of Sherwood that wouldn't.
Right, I'm just saying that if you guys can give us questions that you have about the document, that we can make sure that we address them at the next.
And I can at least go through and highlight things that I have concerns with. I don't know if it necessarily generates questions, but just things that jump out to me that.
Yeah, whatever you can give us so that we can have as much information for you at the next.
Who specifically should I send these to? Carrie, okay. Thank you.
And then, I'm just realizing there's 2 commissioners that aren't here and one that's not going to be here at the next meeting.
That's the 27th?
Yes.
Hawaii, so I'd much rather
Cancel
be
it.
here.
Cancel it.
She can't share she can't vote. She can't share. She can share her thoughts, but.
You want me to call in from the beach?
I was gonna say there's still 4.
Four still quorum.
There's still 4. You're gonna be here, Chris, at the next meeting?
Sure.
Sure.
No, I'm just more thinking that there's 2 commissioners that aren't here that will be here, so we need to make sure that they've watched this and.
Oh, yeah.
have their questions addressed as well. So.
Makes sense.
And commissioners are always welcome to call in to these meetings, regardless.
Even from Hawaii.
Even from Hawaii.
And it'll be like, I don't know, what is it, a 3-hour time difference? 1 hour?
Just
2?
don't do video conference.
Doesn't
I'm
matter.
just gonna be mad.
It'd only be 8 p.m.
It's going to be early.
And anytime,
okay.
just as an
Great.
aside, it doesn't have to be a legislative matter. If we have a hearing next time that's on some site plan and you have a question for staff or you want them to wordsmith something before the next hearing, I have called Erica and Joy and Julia before a hearing to say, hey, just so you know, I don't agree with these 6 conditions of approval, and I'm going to be bringing them up during the hearing. It gives them an opportunity.
Not blindsided.
Yeah. So always feel free to call staff, ask for questions, mention concerns. Sometimes,
I will never call anyone.
Okay, so it sounds
I will email.
like we're going to continue this. Is that what it is?
That's what it sounds
Do I
like.
have to make a motion for that?
Yes,
Yeah.
someone does.
All right. I'm going to do that.
So I'll just leave.
Run out.
Just, we don't even adjourn the meeting. It just keeps going for the next 2 weeks.
So, this is
Well, there you go. That's how we solved the problem. Yes.
Is it the one that's closing the hearing and record?
No.
Okay.
Try again.
Wait a second.
That sounds right to me.
Yes, so we need to ask the commission, are we going to take any more public testimony at the next meeting, or are we going to do deliberation only?
Deliberation only.
Deliberation only.
Okay, so then, we will close the public hearing
Okay.
and continue
Just
for
the record, I don't
deliberation.
know that we ever opened the public hearing.
Because we didn't have anyone.
I think we, yeah, I don't think.
So
we
let's
ever
open it and then.
Did I not read this?
I don't
Like,
believe so. Am I missing?
We did not open it.
I think we just did staff
Okay.
report and then went into this. I don't
Just-
think we ever opened a public.
Can I open and
We're just
close
gonna-
it in the same sentence?
So,
Can I
We need to open it and
Oh,
do the,
okay.
move to,
do I need to read this whole thing?
no,
yes.
do,
If you want to do it, the public hearing tonight, as opposed to doing it next time.
oh, well,
Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on, because I want to go straight to deliberation, because they'll have a de novo hearing in front of council, and since no one showed up tonight, I can't imagine anybody's going to storm our doors for the next meeting.
You just invited it.
Yep. You never know.
The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on PA 1801 Housing Needs Analysis, Adoption, and Text Amendment to the Comprehensive Plan. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning PA 1801 Housing Needs Analysis, Adoption, and Text Amendment to the Comprehensive Plan. The Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will have presented the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission. We'll open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as followed. Applicants 30 minutes, persons in favor of application 4 minutes, persons opposed to the application 4 minutes, rebuttal from the applicant, remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by commission, discussion and deliberation. If this matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record as hearing recorded. Please speak clearly into the microphone. The Planning Commission's role in this application is to make a recommendation for action by the City Council. And as that the staff has already presented the staff report, there are no persons in the audience to testify in favor of or opposed to the application. There will be no rebuttal from the applicant at this time. So we will now close the public hearing. We have received final comments from staff and directions to staff for further information and direction. And we will have final discussion and deliberation by the commission at our next meeting if the commission so votes for that. All right. You're up, Chris.
Forward to this. All right. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission close the public hearing and continue deliberation on the application for PA 18-01 Housing Needs Analysis, Adoption and Text Amendment to the Comprehensive Plan until February 27th, 2018.
Is there a second?
second,
It's been moved and seconded that we close and continue PA 18 Housing Needs Analysis, Adoption, and Text Amendment to the Comprehensive Plan to our February 27th meeting. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'm presuming there's not a lot of commission announcements.
Yeah, if you want to be in Hello Dolly, the auditions are happening in a month.
Hello, Dolly. All right, when's the next comprehensive plan meeting?
For the
Comp plan?
comp plan committee,
Yes.
will be in April.
All right. Thank you for a very, very long meeting. We are adjourned.